Welcome to Infinite Novel Audio. Like, subscribe, and enjoy this video. Chapter 1: Rebirth in the Honghuang World as a Human, starting with Chaos Double Pupils. The Honghuang World beneath Mount Buzhu. This was the center of the world, the place formed by the spine of Pangu. The towering mountain pierced straight into the clouds, its height spanning countless tens of thousands of miles. At the foot of the mountain, a great river surged past, waves crashing against the reef on the bank and whipping up 1,000 piles of snow. By the riverside, a figure stood quietly. It was a woman with a human head and snake body, her face impossible to describe with worldly language, as if she gathered all the spiritual essence of heaven and earth within herself. Her body was surrounded by the Tao charm of creation, and every strand of her hair swayed, pulling at the resonance of the surrounding law. It was Nuwa. She looked at her reflection in the water, her brows slightly furrowed, as if contemplating the opportunity to attain the Tao. After a long time, a flash of realization crossed her eyes. The Yao race rules the heavens, the Wu race rules the earth, and slaughter is constant between heaven and earth, yet one race is missing, one that can bear the peace and tranquility of the world. Nuwa waved her fair hand gently, taking out a lump of soil emitting 9-colored light. That was the 9 heavens breathing soil. She then took out a bottle of crystal-clear water. That was the Honghuang World's #1 healing medicine, 3-light divine water. Mixing the soil and the divine water, she kneaded them in her hands. Her movements were slow and meticulous. In no time, a clay figurine took shape in her hands. This clay figurine had well-defined features, sound limbs, a body as flawless as white jade, and the innate Tao charm circulating within it. Two. Nuwa gently blew a breath of creation, immortal Kai. The clay figurine landed and grew in the wind, transforming into a youth 8 feet tall. This was Xuan. At this moment he was muddled, his consciousness still within chaos. He felt as if he had dreamt a long dream, a dream without light, only endless darkness. Suddenly, a warm current surged into his body. That was Nuwa's creation, immortal Kai, and also his source of life. Xuan's eyelids twitched. Then he opened them wide. Boom! The moment Xuan opened his eyes, a sudden change occurred. The originally clear sky suddenly split open a fissure. In Xuan's eyes, there were no distinct black and white pupils. Instead, they were replaced by 2 strange, overlapping pupils. One large and one small, tightly locked together, as deep as 2 black holes connecting to chaos. That was Chaos Double Pupils. And not just ordinary ones. In the deepest part of those pupils, grey chaos Kai surged wildly, as if evolving the scene of the creation of the world. 2 grey rays of divine light shot out from Xuan's eyes, without any warning. These beams ignored space and distance, piercing directly through the void realm at the foot of Mount Buzhu, leaving behind 2 pitch-black cracks that could not heal for a long time. Even the protective holy light surrounding Nuwa was stirred into ripples by these 2 gazes. Nuwa's hand, which was about to continue kneading the soil, paused in midair. Her beautiful eyes, which contained the sun, moon, and stars, looked at this newly born person with astonishment. Innate Chaos Double Pupils, and accompanied by Chaos Kai. Nuwa whispered to herself. She did not expect that the first human race she created on a whim would have such a background. Such a physique, even among the innate gods and demons, was enough to rank in the forefront. Since that is the case, I shall bestow upon you the name, Xuan. Nuwa spoke, her words manifesting into law. Xuan. Xuan murmured, repeating the name, the divine chaos light in his eyes gradually receding and returning to normal. He looked at the tall, holy woman in front of him, and the fragments of memories from his previous life in his mind quickly reorganized, overlapping with the scene before him. Mount Buzhu. Nuwa creates humans. I have transmigrated, and I am the first person created by Nuwa. Xuan was shocked in his heart. But he dared not move, nor did he dare to speak. Because Nuwa had already turned around to continue her work of creating humans. Perhaps because she had Xuan as a perfect template, Nuwa's subsequent movements were much faster. One clay figurine after another was kneaded out, landing and turning into humans. Although these people were also innate Dao body, compared to Xuan, they lacked an inexplicable Dao charm, and their eyes did not possess that shocking vision. Very quickly, Nuwa had kneaded out 3,000 clay figurines. These were the 3,000 innate human race of the future. Too slow. Nuwa looked at the remaining 9 heavens-breathing soil on the ground and shook her head slightly. She casually snapped off a gourd vine nearby, dipped it in the mud, and swung it vigorously all around. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribers, and share to Infinite Novel Audio. Mud splashed everywhere. Each mud spot that landed transformed into a human upon meeting the wind. However, these humans flung out by the vine were a notch inferior to the 3,000 needed by hand, both in terms of physique and background. Even so, in just a short moment, the foot of Mount Baju was filled with dense figures. There were as many as 129,600 of them, matching the number of a yuan. When the last human was born, the world stood still. An indescribably grand pressure descended upon every corner of the Honghuang world without warning. Rumble. Above the 9 heavens, purple Kai came from the east for 30,000 miles. Countless golden lotus flowers gushed from the earth, flowers fell from the sky, and golden lotuses sprang from the ground. A pillar of mysterious yellow karma, thick as a pillar supporting the heavens, descended from beyond the heavens and directly enveloped Nuwa. That was the karma of creating humans. It was also the opportunity to become a saint. Nuwa closed her eyes, and her body slowly rose into the air. The massive golden cloud of karma condensed behind her, finally transforming into a golden wheel of karma that illuminated all the heavens and myriad worlds. At the same time, the Hengmeng purple Kai within Nuwa trembled violently, merging with this sky full of karma. Crack! That was the sound of the realm barrier shattering. A terrifying aura belonging to a saint, with Mount Baju as the center, instantly swept across the entire Honghuang world continent. At this moment, whether it was the Dragon clan on the shores of the East Sea or the Phoenix clan at the undying volcano, whether it was the demon emperor of the heavenly court or the ancestral Wu on the ground, all living beings felt a trembling from the depths of their soul at this moment. Except for Xuan. He stood at the very front of the crowd, his Chaos Double Pupils lighting up slightly, helping him offset most of the saint's pressure, allowing him to look directly at this epoch-making scene. Kunlun Mountain, Yuxu Palace. The Sanking, who were in seclusion contemplating the heavenly Tao, opened their eyes simultaneously. The Wiskin Tai Shang Laozi's hand shook, and a trace of shock appeared on his usually calm face. Junior sister Nuwa has actually become a saint first. Yuanshi Tianzun furrowed his brows, looking at the holy light soaring into the sky in the direction of Mount Baju, his tone filled with disbelief. The Tao of creation, one can become a saint by creating a race. Sect leader Tongshan stood up abruptly, sword intent surging in his eyes. A good Nuwa indeed. I did not expect that we, the orthodox successors of Pangu, would fall a step behind. Outside the 33 heavens, the demon heavenly court. The wine cup in Dijan's hand was crushed with a pa sound. Dongwang Teiyi struck the chaos bell violently. Dang! The bell toll was melodious, attempting to suppress the saint's pressure permeating the heavenly court, but it was like a mayfly shaking a tree. Nuwa, Empress Hua has actually become a saint. Dijan's expression was complex, containing both wild joy and deep apprehension. The joy was because Nuwa was the Empress Hua of the Yao race. With her becoming a saint, the Yao race's backbone was strengthened. The apprehension was that from now on, there would be a great Buddha above the heads of the Yao race that needed to be worshipped. Could the power of the heavenly court still be held? In the west, Mount Sumeru. Taoist Jiyin and Taoist Junti looked at each other, their faces full of bitterness. Senior brother, the East has produced a saint first. How difficult the day of our Western revival will be, Taoist Junti sighed. Taoist Jiyin's already sorrowful face was now wrinkled like a bitter gourd. Beneath Mount Baju, the holy light dissipated. Nuwa had completely transformed by this time. She was no longer the innate god and demon Empress Wa of the Yao race, but a saint of the heavenly Tao, high above, viewing all things as straw dogs. Chapter 2. Nuwa appoints me as the human emperor, bestowing supreme treasures. Nuwa lowered her head, her gaze sweeping over the 129,600 members of the human race below. Her eyes were indifferent, devoid of the slightest emotional fluctuation. To a saint, these newly created lives were merely tools for attaining the Tao. The karma had been settled, the great Tao achieved. Nuwa waved her slender hand, preparing to tear through the void realm and head outside the 33 heavens to establish her dojo. However, just as she was about to turn and leave, her gaze inadvertently swept over the young man standing at the very front. Xuan. At this moment, Xuan was looking up, using his strange double pupils to meet the saint's gaze without any avoidance. Their eyes met. Nuwa's spirit trembled slightly. An inexplicable intuition suddenly welled up in her heart. It was a hint from the heavenly Tao, and also a certain pull from the luck of the human race. This child. Nuwa stopped in her tracks. She looked at Xuan, at the chaos kai swirling in his eyes, and at the extremely pure, albeit weak, innate ancestral kai within him. A flash of inspiration struck her. Nuwa extended a jade-like finger and pointed at Xuan. Her voice was not loud, but supported by the power of the heavenly Tao, it instantly spread across the vast expanse of the primordial world, exploding in the ears of every living being. This child is the first of the human race, bearing the innate creation. He shall be the human emperor of the human race. Boom! As the words fell, the heavenly Tao shook. Human emperor. This was a fruit status personally conferred by a saint. Even if the human race was currently as weak as ants, with these words, the luck of their entire human race condensed upon Xuan. Before Xuan could react, Nuwa waved her hand again. 3 streams of light flew from her sleeve and drifted down before Xuan. The first was a lump of soil emitting 9-colored light. This is the 9 heavens breathing soil. I bestow the remainder upon you. It can protect the human race. The second was a jade bottle, containing 3 light divine water rippling inside. This is the 3 light divine water. It can bring flesh to bones and revive the dead. I bestow it upon you for self-defense. The third was a verdant vine, still stained with specks of mud, emitting a faint aura of mysterious yellow karma. This is the creation god vine. It once carried the merit of creating humans and has now become an acquired karma supreme treasure. It strikes gods above and demons below, specifically injuring the physical body and primordial spirit, ignoring all defenses. The 3 treasures hovered in front of Xuan, emitting fluctuations that would make even a grand unity, golden immortal jealous. After doing all this, Nuwa did not linger. The human race has just been born, you must strive for self-improvement. Leaving behind this decree, Nuwa's figure turned into streams of light and disappeared outside the 33 heavens. The saint had left. But at the foot of Mount Buju, the scene erupted. Human Emperor. Pay respects to the human emperor. One member of the human race reacted first, dropping to their knees and kowtowing heavily to Xuan. Immediately after, those 129,600 newly born humans, still ignorant of the ways of the world, seemed to be summoned by some bloodline connection and knelt down in unison. It was a vast, dark sea of people, stretching as far as the eye could see. Pay respects to the human emperor. This shout, though immature and chaotic, gathered together and actually scattered the clouds in the sky. Xuan stood on the spot, holding the 9 heavens breathing soil and the 3 light divine water, with the creation god vine wrapped around his waist. The wind blew, bringing a trace of chill. He looked at the spectacular scene before him, at those pairs of eyes filled with worship, dependence, and confusion. He looked down at himself. Aside from the treasures in his hands, he was just like everyone else below, completely bare, without even a loincloth. This setup. Xuan swallowed, feeling incredibly panicked inside. A saint appointing an emperor. Karma Supreme Treasures. It sounded great, a dream start. But, Goddess Nuwa, did you forget something? You didn't teach me how to cultivate. I have the title of human emperor and an innate Tao body, but I'm still just a mortal. This primordial world is crawling with great Yao beasts. Any patrolling minion could swallow me in one bite. Xuan gripped the god vine, feeling his palms sweating. He looked at the few pairs of greedy, green beast eyes that had already lit up in the dense forest in the distance. Those were Yao beasts that had been scared off by the saint's aura, but were now circling back because the saint had left. Hell mode start. Xuan wailed in his heart. But on the surface, he straightened his back and put on a dignified appearance. Since he had been pushed into this position, he had to keep up the act. Who else could the human race rely on right now, but him? The saint's purple aura had gone east, and that pressure that had weighed down the ages gradually dissipated. But at the foot of Mount Buju, a faint saintly aura remained. It was an invisible barrier, like a giant bubble, shrouding these 129,600 newborn humans. Those Yao beasts that had been eager to move hovered outside that invisible boundary. The greed in their eyes was almost overflowing. It was a craving for the innate Tao body. But the fear of the saint, rooted deep in their souls, made them only dare to let out low growls, not daring to cross the line. Temporarily safe. Xuan breathed a sigh of relief, his hand gripping the creation god vine loosening slightly. He turned around and looked at the group of bewildered clansmen. Most of them were still in a kneeling position, their eyes clear but ignorant, like blank sheets of paper. As the wind blew, many shivered, instinctively huddling together for warmth. As the human emperor, the backbone of this group, he had to do something. Everyone stand up. Xuan spoke, his voice clearly spreading throughout the area, supported by the innate Tao rhyme. Although the Holy Mother Nuwa has left, she left behind her saintly might to protect us. Those Yao beasts cannot enter for the time being. We cannot sit and wait for death, nor can we run around blindly. Taking this valley as the boundary, no one is to step a single step outside the range of the saintly aura. We must survive here until we possess the strength to protect ourselves. His words were brief and powerful. Although the human race was ignorant, they had a natural obedience to the orders of the human emperor. We obey the decree of the human emperor. The sound like a roaring mountain and a crashing sea rang out again. However, the days that followed were not easy. Night fell. Darkness enveloped the valley. There was no light, only the green eyes of Yao beasts flickering in the distance. Fear spread through the crowd. Cold, so cold. Scared, dark. Low sobs rose and fell. Xuan sat on a large blue stone, watching this scene, his brows locked in a frown. Although the innate human race had strong physiques and would not freeze to death. But this primitive state of survival was truly too harsh. It seems I must solve the survival problem first. Xuan looked at a burly man beside him. This man was the first to kneel to him, and also the strongest among this group of humans. Come here, Xuan beckoned. The man hurried over and knelt respectfully, human emperor. It's dark now, are you afraid? Xuan asked. The man nodded honestly, afraid, I can't see and I feel panicked. Xuan pointed to a dead tree in the distance that had been struck by lightning, where a trace of charred marks remained. Thunder can create fire, and fire can dispel darkness and bring warmth. Since there is no thunder in the sky, why not ask this wood on the ground? The man was stunned, a trace of confusion flashing in his eyes. Ask the wood. There is fire in the wood, hidden but not released. Xuan casually picked up 2 dry branches and made a rubbing motion. Motion generates heat, and extreme heat generates fire. Go try it. Although the man did not understand the principle, he trusted the human emperor. He found a thick piece of dead wood and a sharp, hard wooden stick, and began to drill frantically, imitating Xuan. Huff, huff. He was very strong, and wood shavings flew everywhere. The surrounding clansmen gathered around, watching curiously. After an unknown amount of time, a wisp of blue smoke rose. It's smoking, someone exclaimed. The man put in more effort, the veins on his arms bulging. Puff! A spark splashed onto the dry leaves, instantly igniting a small orange flame. Light! In this pitch-black night, this small flame was as dazzling as the sun. It dispelled the darkness and brought warmth. Fire, it's fire! The man shouted excitedly, holding the burning wood and running around the valley. Wherever he went, the clansmen cheered, and most of the fear dissipated. Boom! Just at this moment, high above the 9 heavens, the winds and clouds changed suddenly. A mass of mysterious yellow karma golden clouds appeared out of thin air. The amount of karma, while not as much as Nuwa's creation of humans, was enough to make a grand unity golden immortal jealous. The karma split into two. 80% fell into the man's body, and 20% flew toward Xuan. I am ancestor Sugenshi. I have brought fire to the human race to light up the path ahead. The man had a flash of inspiration, held the torch high, and roared at the sky. As the karma entered his body, his cultivation soared instantly, from mortal straight into heavenly immortal, finally stabilizing at the true immortal realm. The first old ancestor of the human race, ancestor Sugenshi, had taken his position. Chapter 3, Opening the Dual World Gate, First Meeting with the Willow Deity. Xuan accepted the 20% karma for education, and the karma golden wheel within his body shone once more. He nodded with a smile, good. With fire, life became a little easier. But soon, new problems arose. The primordial world was rainy and filled with venomous insects and fierce beasts. The clansmen slept on the ground, often bitten by venomous insects or falling ill from being drenched in heavy rain. A few days later, a torrential rain poured down. The clansmen shivered in the mud, with nowhere to hide. Xuan stood in the rain and found another man with intelligent eyes. He pointed to a huge bird's nest in a tree. Though simple, it could shield them from the wind and rain. Even birds and beasts know to build nests to live in. Why must the human race sleep in mud pits? There are nests in the trees that can avoid dampness and prevent venomous insects. The man's eyes lit up, as if a door to a new world had been opened. He immediately gathered a few people, climbed the big tree, broke off branches, and bound them with vines. After countless failures, the first simple treehouse was built. Although it was drafty and ugly, it was a home. Boom! Karma descended from the sky. I am Yaochao. Today I construct wooden nests for the human race to settle down. The man's cultivation surged, and he also achieved the true immortal fruit status. The second old ancestor of the human race, Yaochao, was born. Xuan once again received 20% of the education karma. A few more days passed. The cold wind was biting. Xuan looked at the clansmen who were still naked, only simply covered by leaves. Although the innate Dao body was cold-resistant, their skins scratched by thorns looked shocking. He called over a thoughtful woman. Bark of plants and trees, fur of beasts, all can be used as clothing. Covering shame is secondary, protecting the body is fundamental. Xuan picked up a piece of animal skin and draped it over the woman. The woman seemed to have realized something. She found tree bark, tore it into threads, and used a bone needle to sew the animal's skin. When the first piece of animal skin clothing was worn on her body, the warmth and sense of security made her shed tears. Boom! Karma descended again. I am Z. Today I make clothes for the human race to resist the cold and protect the body. The woman achieved true immortal status. The third old ancestor of the human race, Z, had returned. Thus, the three ancestors of the human race were gathered. Fire, housing, and clothing. These three seemingly simple things were the cornerstones of civilization. They allowed the human race to truly take root in the harsh primordial environment. Xuan looked at the three imposing old ancestors and felt a bit more settled. With these three true immortal-level combatants, plus his own human emperor aura and the lingering prestige of the saint, the human race had temporarily stabilized their footing in this valley. Long, leisurely years are the least valuable. In the blink of an eye, 10 years passed. For the great powers of the primordial world, 10 years was nothing more than a nap. But for the newborn human race, these 10 years were earth-shattering. Inside the valley, rows of treehouses were arranged in good order. The campfire never went out all year round. The clansmen learned to gather wild fruits and learned simple hunting. Xuan sat on the highest stone platform, watching the clansmen busy every day. He appeared dignified on the surface, but his heart grew more and more anxious. It had been 10 years. For some reason, he was still a mortal. Although he was an innate Tao body, ageless, immortal, and had infinite strength. Although he had karma protecting his body and was immune to all laws. But he had no cultivation technique. Nuwa left in a hurry and did not pass down any techniques. Laozi had not yet established the human religion, and the golden core Tao was nowhere to be seen. Xuan and the others relied on karma to become true immortals and had magic power. Only he, the human emperor, was empty inside, possessing only the power of blood and Kai. What kind of situation is this? Xuan sighed, staring blankly at the flowing clouds on the top of Mount Buju. Do I have to wait for Laozi to come and preach? That would take forever. By that time, the Lick calamity would be over, and it would be too late. Just when Xuan was at his wit's end. A strange fluctuation suddenly came from the depths of his eyes. The Chaos Double Pupils, which had been silent for 10 years, began to heat up without warning. Xuan's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly closed his eyes to look within himself. He saw that in the depths of his overlapping pupils, the originally grey chaos Kai flow had now formed a vortex. In the center of the vortex, a point of starlight lit up. Immediately after, the starlight rapidly expanded, turning into an ancient and mysterious light gate. On that light gate, space-time laws that did not belong to the primordial world were flowing. A message passed through the Chaos Double Pupils and was directly imprinted into his mind. Dual World Gate opened. Connected World, a cultivation world that focuses on sanctification through the physical body and excavating the human body's treasure trove. This. Xuan opened his eyes abruptly, his breathing rapid. A cultivation world. Excavating the human body's treasure trove. Didn't this just solve his urgent problem? He couldn't cultivate in the primordial world because he didn't have a suitable cultivation technique, and the primordial world's immortal cultivation system had too high a starting point, always involving comprehending the heavenly Tao. If he went to another world and found a technique that started from the basics and specialized in the physical body, with this innate Tao body that Nuwa personally molded, wouldn't he just take off? Heaven never cuts off all paths. Xuan clenched his fists, his eyes bursting with unprecedented brilliance. He did not hesitate at all and immediately made a decision. Go. Must go. Staying in the primordial world would only make him a mascot. Going there might allow him to fight for a future. Xuan stood up and tidied the exquisite animal skin imperial robe that Z had sewn by hand. Someone come here. A moment later, Xuan walked over with large strides and bowed respectfully, human emperor. In 10 years, Xuan's aura had become more stable, faintly possessing the demeanor of a grandmaster. Xuan looked at him with a solemn expression. Xuan, I feel the call of the heavenly Tao and need to go into seclusion to comprehend the Tao, for a few months at the shortest, and a few years at the longest. During this time, all matters in the tribe shall be decided by you, Yaochao, and Z through consultation. Remember, guard the valley well, and do not step out of the range of the saints' lingering prestige by even one step. If any great demons come to invade. Xuan untied the god-creating vine from his waist and solemnly handed it to Xuan. Sacrifice this treasure and it will keep you safe. Xuan received the god-creating vine with both hands, his eyes full of panic and a sense of responsibility. He knelt and kowtowed, his voice sonorous and powerful. Your subject obeys your decree. Your subject swears to protect the human race to the death, and awaits the human emperor's emergence from seclusion. Xuan nodded and said no more. He turned around and returned to the depths of the valley, to the stone house that belonged to him. The stone door was tightly closed. Xuan sat cross-legged on the stone bed, took a deep breath, and calmed his mind. "It's open," he thought silently in his heart. In his eyes, the chaos divine light flourished. The space-time gate that existed in the depths of his pupils slowly opened. A vast, wild aura, completely different from the primordial world, rushed toward him from behind the gate. Xuan stepped forward. His body disappeared into thin air inside the stone house, leaving only a faint ripple in space. Time and space changed, stars shifted. When Xuan's feet touched the ground again, the surrounding environment had completely changed. It was no longer the oppressive, heavy air under Mount Buzhu. The sky here was higher and further, and the spiritual Kai here was more violent. The air was filled with the fragrance of soil and vegetation, as well as dull beast roars coming from the deep mountains in the distance. Xuan opened his eyes. A message emerged from his mind again. Current world, perfect world. Location, Great Wilderness Sea Village. Perfect world. Xuan was shocked and then immediately ecstatic. If it was the perfect world, it was simply too suitable for him. Blood-moving realm, cave heaven, spirit transformation realm. This cultivation system was practically tailor-made for his innate human race body. Xuan suppressed his excitement, looked up, and surveyed his surroundings. It was late at night. All around was a quiet little village. The houses were built of huge stones, rough and primitive. And at the entrance of the village not far from him, stood a colossal object. It was a huge tree stump, charred black all over, with a diameter of more than 10 meters, as if it had been struck by lightning, exuding a sense of dead silence. But at the top of the charred trunk, a tender green willow branch was quietly hanging down. It swayed gently in the night wind, emitting a glowing green light, soft and sacred, like the only lighthouse in the dark night of the great wilderness. Xuan's pupils contracted sharply. Charred tree stump, the only willow branch. Willow deity. Xuan murmured to himself. He knew that his opportunity had arrived. Chapter 4, Person from Outside the Heavens, Willow Deity's Curiosity. The night in the great wilderness was terrifyingly quiet. She Village sat at the foot of the mountain range, like a sleeping young beast. A few faint lights flickered in the stone houses, those were left by the villagers keeping watch. In the surrounding darkness, muffled roars of beasts could be heard occasionally, shaking the leaves until they fell rustlingly. At the entrance of the village, that huge, charred willow stump appeared exceptionally deathly still in the night. Its entire body was pitch black, as if it had been burned by heavenly fire, leaving only a remnant. Only a single tender green willow branch hung down from the top of the charred trunk, swaying gently with the night breeze, emitting a faint green light. This bit of green light was the only guardian of Shi Village. The moment Xuan arrived at Shi Village, a sudden change occurred. Xuan's body was an innate Tao body personally crafted by the Saint Nuwa, and what flowed within him was the purest, most primitive innate spiritual Kai of the Honghuang world. That was the Kai of the ancestral veins beneath Mount Buzhu, the first breath of vitality when heaven and earth were first opened. And in the lower realm of this world, the law was not yet complete. When a container filled with pure innate spiritual Kai suddenly appeared in a barren land where the law was incomplete. It was like a lake full of clear springs, suddenly appearing in a parched desert. Two. A visible wave of white Kai, with Xuan as the center, roared and spread outwards. That was not wind. That was innate spiritual Kai so dense it could not be dissolved. This spiritual Kai was too pure, carrying a supreme rhythm of Tao, instantly filling every inch of space in Shi Village. Crack! In the soil beside Xuan's feet, several withered grass seeds germinated, sprouted, and blossomed the moment they touched this spiritual Kai. In the blink of an eye, a cluster of lush green grass grew to knee height, with crystalline dew hanging on the leaves, emitting an alluring fragrance. The originally hard and dry ground became soft and moist. The violent, sweltering feeling in the air disappeared, replaced by a gentle, jade-like coolness. Even those rough stone houses, under the washing of this spiritual Kai, had the dust on their surfaces removed and actually began to emit a faint, precious light. The Baranshi village, at this moment, seemed to have turned into a legendary blessed land. Xuan stood in place, stunned for a moment. He hadn't expected that just by crossing a world, the commotion would be so great. Is this the gap between innate and acquired? Xuan looked down at the wild grass growing wildly at his feet, clicking his tongue in wonder inwardly. In the Honghuang world, he was just a mortal, unable to even defeat a minor demon. But upon arriving in this perfect world, the spiritual Kai radiating from his body alone could benefit the land. Just as Xuan was preparing to restrain his aura. Rustle, rustle, rustle. A series of urgent sounds came. He saw that the originally lifeless charred willow wood beside him was now trembling violently. The tender green willow branch, which had only been swaying gently in the wind, now seemed to have come alive. It straightened up, its whole body erupting with brilliant green light. It was no longer a faint firefly, but like a burning green torch, illuminating half the village. It moved. That willow branch was like a spirit snake that had been starving for countless years, crazily reaching out towards Xuan. It did not attack Xuan. It just stopped 3 feet in front of Xuan, dancing wildly, greedily devouring every wisp of innate spiritual Kai escaping from Xuan's body. Slurp. A sound similar to drinking water even came from the air. With the injection of innate spiritual Kai, the green on that willow branch became deeper and more crystalline, as if carved from jade. Even on that charred trunk, the originally withered and cracked bark began to heal, faintly revealing a trace of newborn tender white. A vast aura of life revived from within this dead tree stump. Xuan stood there, not daring to move. He knew that this was Willow deity waking up. That ancestral sacrificial spirit who had once fought until no one in the world dared to claim supremacy in the previous era. Although she was currently down on her luck and undergoing nirvana, she was still an immortal king giant in essence. A vast will descended without warning. This will was not overbearing, unlike the saints of the Honghuang world who were high and mighty, viewing all things as straw dogs. It carried a kind of etherealness that had seen through the vicissitudes of life, a kind of tenacity that remained undying after experiencing 10,000 kalpas. The surrounding space seemed to solidify. The willow branch stopped dancing and hovered in front of Xuan's glabella, emitting a glowing green light, as if scrutinizing him. A voice echoed directly in the depths of Xuan's mind. Where do you come from? The voice could not distinguish between male or female, could not detect joy or anger, yet it was full of confusion. Why do you possess chaos spiritual Kai? This aura is pure ancient, resembling the origin of all things, yet it is different from any origin I know. And upon you, there is an origin Tao rhythm that I have never seen before. Willow deity had woken up. She had been awakened by this delicacy she had never tasted before. Xuan took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the nervousness in his heart. He knew that when facing a powerhouse of this level, lying was easily exposed, but telling the truth was more likely to trigger great karma. He had to be half-truthful. Xuan tidied the animal skin imperial robe on his body and bowed slightly to the charred tree stump, his posture neither humble nor arrogant. Junior Xuan greets the ancestral sacrificial spirit. He raised his head, and in those iconic double pupils, Chaos Kai circulated, echoing the green light on the willow branch. Junior is a person from outside the heavens. Due to an accident, I strayed into a space-time rift and lost my way in the chaos. I did not know how much time had passed, and when I opened my eyes again, I had landed here. As for this aura, Xuan paused, a wry smile appearing on his face. Perhaps it was because I was tainted with some chaos aura in the space-time rift. Junior is unaware of it myself. There was truth and falsehood in these words. The transmigration was true, and the space-time rift was also true. As for the chaos aura, That was certainly not something he was tainted with. It was his own native prehistoric specialty. The willow branch swayed gently, seemingly discerning the authenticity of Xuan's words. Space-time rift outside the heavens. Willow deity's voice carried a hint of contemplation. This world does indeed have channels leading outside the boundaries, but they have long been severed. The next moment, an invisible fluctuation emanated from the willow branch, instantly enveloping Xuan's entire body. That was Willow deity's investigation. She wanted to see through this young man's background, to see through his past and future. However, the moment Willow deities will touched Xuan's body. The double pupils in Xuan's eyes suddenly lit up. The two pupils overlapped, infinitely deep. A grey mist surged from the depths of the pupils, instantly obscuring Willow deity's perception. That was not Xuan actively defending, but the double pupil's self-protection mechanism. It was even more of a layer of karma mist left on Xuan by the prehistoric heavenly Tao. In Willow deity's vision, the young man in front of her suddenly disappeared. Replacing him was a piece of chaos. A boundless absolute chaos without up, down, left, right, time or space. Even though she was an immortal king giant, even though she had once understood the mysteries of the ages, she could not see through this layer of chaos mist at this moment, nor could she see Xuan's past and future. A blank slate, not within the five elements, jumping out of heaven and earth. Cannot see through. A hint of surprise appeared in Willow deity's voice. Your fate is actually a piece of chaos. The willow branch withdrew its investigative fluctuation and became gentle again. Although she could not see through Xuan, Willow deity did not feel any malice from the other party. On the contrary, she felt very comfortable. Chapter 5, Apprenticeship to the Willow deity, hugging the Willow deity's thigh. At this moment, the Willow deity was somewhat surprised. Because as long as this youth stood beside it, the pure spiritual Kai that constantly radiated from his body would be continuously absorbed by it. For the Willow deity, who was struggling through nirvana, that kind of spiritual Kai was simply the best tonic in the world. In just this short moment, the Willow deity felt that its recovery progress had jumped forward significantly. At the usual rate, it would take at least 10 years of absorbing the essence of the great wilderness to repair that patch of cracked bark. But now, a few breaths of time were enough. 10,000 times. The Willow deity was shaken inwardly. As long as he is beside me, my recovery speed is more than 10,000 times faster than usual. How could this be just a youth? This was clearly a walking, human-shaped immortal medicine. No, even more precious than an immortal medicine. Moreover, the Willow deity's consciousness fluctuated slightly. On Xuan, it faintly perceived a subtle, almost imperceptible connection of karma. That karma was very faint, yet extremely tenacious, as if a long, long time ago, at some unknowable point in time, they had already crossed paths. Strange karma, chaos destiny, and this unparalleled auxiliary cultivation physique. The Willow deity was silent for a moment. This youth appearing here might be the will of heaven, or perhaps a variable. But in any case, this was a tremendous opportunity for both it and She Village. Since it could not see through him, it would keep him by its side to observe. Since he was of great use, it would forge a bond of goodwill. On the charred tree stump, that willow branch lifted once more and gently tapped Xuan's glabella. This time there was no probing, only a gentle thought transmitted over. Xuan. The Willow deity spoke, its tone becoming solemn. Your physique is rare in this world, a natural vessel for carrying the Tao. Your Chaos Double Pupils are even more extraordinary, containing the profound truth of creating the world. Even in the upper realm, they are legendary assets of invincibility. Xuan's heart jumped. It was here. He held his breath, waiting for that crucial sentence. Although you possess the physique, you lack the method to cultivate. You have a mountain of treasure but do not know how to mine it. Meeting is a matter of fate. Are you willing to take me as your master? Hearing this, the heavy stone in Xuan's heart finally fell to the ground. He suddenly looked up, his eyes full of joy. Apprenticeship to the Willow deity. This was one of the thickest thighs in the perfect world. Having an immortal king giant as a master, this starting point was far higher than those so-called saints of great sects. Moreover, the Willow deity was right. What he lacked most now was a method to cultivate. He couldn't cultivate over in the Primordial World, and the golden core Tao was nowhere to be seen. But here, with the Willow deity's guidance, his innate Tao body would definitely be able to unleash terrifying potential. Disciple Xuan is willing. Without any hesitation, Xuan immediately knelt on both knees and performed a respectful kowtow to the charred willow tree. Disciple Xuan pays respects to master. This bow was sincere. Good. The Willow deity's voice also carried a trace of gratification. Since you have entered my sect, you shall inherit my dharma. You may rise. The willow branch flicked gently, and a gentle force lifted Xuan up. You are a newcomer, and you possess extraordinary phenomena, so it is not suitable for you to travel in the outside world. Although this Shi village is remote and simple, it excels in its tranquility and freedom from worldly strife. You shall stay here for the time being and cultivate with me. Xuan nodded. I will strictly follow master's arrangements. He turned his head and looked around. This was Shi village, the place that produced Emperor Huang. Now he was here. Not only had he become the Willow deity's disciple, but he had also become a max-level account in this newbie village. Master! Xuan suddenly remembered something and asked. Disciple is new here and has no belongings, but there seem to be some children in this village who are quite spiritual. I wonder if that. His gaze passed through several stone houses and looked toward a room in the center of the village. There a small child was sleeping. Although still in swaddling clothes, a tenacious vitality was pulsing within his body like a wounded little beast. Emperor Huang's Shihao. At this moment, he was still a little milk baby who loved to drink beast milk. The Willow deity seemed to know what Xuan was looking at. That child's life background is rugged. He suffered a great disaster and was fostered here. His name is Shihao. Since you are already my disciple, if it is convenient in the future, you may look after him a little. A smile curled up on the corner of Xuan's mouth. Look after him, that must be done. This was the future Emperor Huang. Master, rest assured. Xuan cupped his hands to the willow tree and said seriously. Disciple will definitely take care of him like my own younger brother. Take him to drink the best milk and fight the fiercest vicious beast. Willow deity. Early in the morning, the first ray of sunlight pierced through the clouds of the great wilderness. Shi village awoke from its slumber. The air was filled with the fragrance of soil and the faint scent of grass and trees. Several colorful giant birds circled over the village entrance, emitting crisp cries. Xuan slowly woke up. After a night's rest, plus the nourishment of the rich life essence beside the willow deity, his spirit was excellent. Those Chaos Double Pupils slightly converged under the morning light, looking like just a pair of eyes that were excessively deep. On the open space at the village entrance, quite a few people had already gathered. Clan Chief Xunfeng got up the earliest, leaning on a cane, and was leading several strong men to check the traps around the village. When they saw Xuan beside the willow deity, everyone's movements paused for a moment. Who is that? Why is he beside Lord Sacrificial Spirit? The villagers whispered to each other, their eyes filled with vigilance. Xuan was just about to explain. The charred willow tree at the village entrance suddenly trembled slightly. That emerald green willow branch swayed in the morning breeze, scattering points of gentle radiance. A thought clearly transmitted into the minds of every Shi village villager present. This child Xuan is my disciple. From now on, he will reside in Shi village temporarily. You all shall treat him with courtesy. The voice was ethereal, devoid of worldly atmosphere, yet possessed unquestionable majesty. The whole scene was dead silent. Even old Chief Shi Yunfeng was stunned. You must know, the Willow deity had come to Shi village for decades, but had never communicated with anyone, let alone taken a disciple. Now it had actually spoken voluntarily, and even gained a disciple. Lord Sacrificial Spirit's disciple. The bone-knifing captain, Shi Linhu's hand almost fell to the ground. The Willow deity spoke, the Willow deity really spoke. Heaven blesses Shi village. After a brief shock, the villagers erupted into cheers. In their simple concepts, the more active Lord Sacrificial Spirit was, the safer the village was. And since this youth named Xuan was the Willow deity's disciple, he was one of their own. Pay respects to the little immortal master. Don't know who took the lead, a group of men swarmed up, their faces filled with honest smiles. Little brother Yi looks really handsome, worthy of being Lord Sacrificial Spirit's disciple. Haven't eaten breakfast yet, right? The flatbread my wife just made is still hot. Little brother Yi, come to my house tonight. I hunted a horned deer yesterday, and my roasted deer leg is superb. Everyone talked at once, their enthusiasm making Yi Xuan a bit overwhelmed. This kind of enthusiasm was not mixed with any falsity, purely because of their reverence for the Willow deity, extending that affection to him. Yi Xuan looked at these simple faces, and a warm current surged in his heart. Although the human race of the Primordial World respected him very much, that was respect for the identity of human emperor, carrying awe and distance. But here in Shi village, it was more like the closeness between neighbors. Uncles, you are too kind. Yi Xuan cupped his hands to return the greeting, with a gentle smile on his face. Since I have entered Shi village, I am a member of the village. Everyone can just call me by my name, there is no need to call me immortal master. His approachable attitude immediately won everyone's favor. Chapter 6, Little One Shi Hao, the miraculous effect of 3 light divine water. Good, wonderful. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng walked over, grinning from ear to ear. Since Yi Xuan has said so, everyone, don't hold back. Go do what you need to do, don't let it delay your morning training. Yes. The men responded in unison and scattered. Morning training was an unshakable rule in Shi village. In this dangerous great wilderness, only a strong body could ensure survival. Ha's up. In the martial arts arena, shouts shook the sky. A group of shirtless men were lifting stone locks and dancing with stone rollers. The smallest stone lock weighed several hundred jin, yet in their hands it was as light as straw. The children were also practicing on the side. The older children were practicing punches, creating gusts of wind. The younger children were playing tug-of-war or moving smaller stones. Yi Xuan stood to the side watching, but his gaze was searching through the crowd. Soon he found his target. In an inconspicuous corner, a little one only 2 or 3 years old was mixed in with a group of older children. He was fair-skinned and delicate, with long eyelashes and large, dark, bright eyes, like an exquisite porcelain doll. At this moment, he was squatting beside a bluestone, exerting force with a huff and a puff. Although the bluestone was not large, for a 3-year-old child, it was definitely heavy. Up! Little one shouted in his milky voice. The muscles on his small arms tightened slightly. The bluestone was actually lifted by him, wobbling as he held it over his head. Good! The adults nearby let out a burst of friendly laughter and cheers. Little one's strength is growing. He will definitely be a great hunter in the future. Hearing the praise, little one's face turned rosy. He threw the stone on the ground, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and revealed a silly, honest smile. Seemingly sensing the gaze fixed upon him, little one turned his head and looked in Yi Xuan's direction. He blinked his large eyes and his nose twitched slightly. So fragrant. A fragrance he had never smelled before drifted into his nose with the wind. It wasn't the scent of flowers, nor was it the scent of meat. That scent was very special. Just one sniff made him feel as if every pore in his body had opened up, and a warm current was rushing through his stomach. That was the innate spiritual Kai radiating from Yi Xuan. To the sensitive little one, Xuan was like a walking human-shaped great medicine. Little one hesitated for a moment. He looked at the clay pot placed on the ground nearby, then looked at Xuan. Finally, he picked up the clay pot, moved his short legs, and ran over with a patter-patter. Big brother. Little one tilted his head up, his voice soft and sweet. You smell so good. Xuan looked down at this future Emperor Huang. Right now, he hadn't experienced those trials of blood and fire. His eyes held only innocence and curiosity. You smell quite nice, too. Xuan smiled, crouched down, and reached out to pinch little one's cheeks. The texture was excellent, soft and plump, with a hint of a milky scent. What is your name? Although Xuan already knew, he still wanted to ask. Everyone calls me Little One. Little One dodged slightly, a bit shy, but he didn't pull away completely. He held the clay pot in his arms and pushed it forward. Big brother, are you hungry? Please have some. The clay pot was filled with white beast milk, still steaming, emitting a rich milky fragrance. This was the milk of 100 beasts that old Chief Shi Yunfeng had specifically sought out from the depths of the great wilderness, meant to nourish little one's body. For this child who had his supreme bone dug out and possessed a weak body, this was the best ration. Xuan looked at the pot of milk, feeling a mix of amusement and helplessness. Was this the legendary Emperor Huang's favorite? Thank you, little one. Xuan shook his head. But big brother is already grown up, I don't drink milk anymore. Little one was stunned for a moment. He lowered his head to look at the clay pot in his hands, then looked at Xuan's tall frame. His small face instantly turned as red as a big apple. I am grown up too. Little one muttered softly, shyly pulling the clay pot closer to his chest. But Clan Chief Grandpa said that one must drink more milk to grow strong. And beast milk is really delicious. After speaking, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva, his eyes clear and sincere. Xuan couldn't help but laugh. This child was just too honest. He looked at little one's thin, small frame. Although he had been well fed by old Chief Shi Yunfeng over the past few years, a trace of weakness still faintly showed at his chest. That was the Dao injury left behind after the supreme bone was dug out. Although it wasn't fatal, it severely affected his foundation. If there was no intervention, this child would still have to suffer quite a bit before slowly recovering. Since you've invited me to drink milk, I'll treat you to something good as well. Xuan's thoughts stirred. He opened his palm. In the center of his palm, there appeared a small jade bottle. That was the 3-light divine water given to him by Nuwa. This was the #1 healing holy medicine of the Primordial World. It was said that as long as there was a single breath left, it could save a life. It could even bring the dead back to life and regrow flesh on bones. Xuan didn't dare to give too much. Little one's body was too weak, it couldn't withstand such great medicinal power. He carefully tilted the mouth of the bottle. A crystal-clear drop of water rolled out. This water drop displayed 3 colors, gold, silver and purple, corresponding to sunlight, moonlight and starlight. Just this single drop. The surrounding air instantly became humid, and a massive life essence spread in all directions. The grass on the ground nearby instantly grew taller. The villagers who were doing morning training all stopped their movements, looking over here in surprise. So fragrant. What kind of precious medicine is this? Little one's eyes widened even more, staring fixedly at that drop of water. His instinct told him that this thing was very important to him. 1,000,000 times more important than beast milk. Little one. Xuan flicked his finger. That drop of 3-light divine water accurately landed in the clay pot in little one's arms. This sweet water is 100 times better than beast milk. Want to taste it? Little one looked at the clay pot. As that drop of water fell in, the white beast milk instantly changed color, glowing with a faint 3-colored radiance, and the fragrance became impossibly rich. He didn't hesitate in the slightest. He had a natural trust in this big brother who smelled so good. He lifted the clay pot. Gulps, gulp. Little one tilted his head back and drank the spiked beast milk in one breath. Burp. Putting down the clay pot. Little one let out a burp. Before he could even speak. Boom! A terrifying heat flow instantly exploded in his stomach. Oh! Little one exclaimed, and the clay pot in his hand fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. He felt as if he had swallowed a small sun. Rolling heat waves flowed along his meridians to his limbs and bones, finally converging at the location of his chest. That was once the place that hurt him the most. That was where a companion's supreme bone had once been, dug out alive by cruel clansmen, leaving only a hideous scar. But now, that location began to heat up, burn, and glow. A brilliant divine light actually penetrated through little one's skin and clothes, bursting out from his chest. Within the light, countless complex runes could be vaguely seen intertwining and reorganizing. Pain, itchy. Little one reached out to scratch his chest, a strange expression of pain and comfort appearing on his small face. Chapter 7, Supreme Bone Regenerates, Willow Deity Recovers. What is going on? Old Chief Xuan threw away his cane and rushed over like a gust of wind. He grabbed the tottering little one and tore open the clothes on his chest. The next second, the old clan chief trembled all over, tears streaming down his face as if he had seen a ghost. It grew back. He saw that at the previously sunken scar on little one's chest, a mass of flesh was now writhing. Deep within that flesh, a piece of crystalline new bone was slowly taking shape. That aura of supreme nobility, capable of crushing the ages, was already beginning to emerge. The supreme bone, nirvana and rebirth. Heavens, is little one's illness cured? It's glowing, little one's chest is glowing. The surrounding villagers exclaimed repeatedly. Although they did not know it was the supreme bone, they could feel that vigorous vitality. Xuan stood to the side, watching this scene, a trace of shock flashing in his eyes. He knew this three-light divine water was powerful. But he hadn't expected it to be this powerful. It was only a single drop. And it was a drop diluted in beast milk at that. It actually directly catalyzed the regeneration of the supreme bone. One had to know in the original plot, Xiao had endured countless hardships and underwent countless baptisms before the supreme bone achieved nirvana. Is this the treasure bestowed by the saint? Xuan swallowed a mouthful of saliva. These high-level resources from the Primordial World, when placed in the perfect world, were simply a cheat code that felt like a dimensional strike. Hot, so hot. Little one twisted in old Chief Xuan's arms, and black sweat began to ooze from his body. It was the impurities within his body being expelled. His aura was climbing steadily. Blood-moving realm early stage, middle stage, late stage. In just a few breaths of time, he had actually broken through the threshold of the blood-moving realm, possessing a giant strength of tens of thousands of jinn. Quick, put him into the medicine cauldron. Xuan made a prompt decision and shouted. The medicinal power hasn't dissipated yet, don't waste it. Old Chief Xuan woke as if from a dream, picked up little one, and ran toward the large black cauldron in the center of the village. Boil water, quickly boil water, add medicinal herbs, and the true blood of vicious beasts. The village instantly descended into chaos, but every person's face was filled with wild joy. Xuan stood in place, watching the busy crowd, and then looked at his own palm. A trace of the three-light divine water's aura still remained there. Since the effect is this good, then can my cultivation plan be a little more aggressive? Xuan turned his head to look at the charred willow tree at the village entrance. Willow deities' willow branches were also swaying toward this side at this moment, seemingly also paying attention to little one's changes. Immediately, the corners of Xuan's mouth curled up slightly. Master, this disciple still has some good things here. Saying this, Xuan turned around and walked to the huge charred willow tree at the village entrance. Although it had absorbed quite a bit of innate spiritual Kai last night, Willow Deity's condition had improved much. But that huge trunk remained charred like charcoal, with only a single solitary willow branch hanging down, appearing somewhat desolate. That was a Tao wound left over from the immortal ancient era, a destructive blow caused by the lightning tribulation's heavenly punishment. Relying only on the bit of aura escaping from Xuan, wanting to fully recover would likely take forever. Master! Xuan spoke, his voice calm. The willow branches swayed gently, and that ethereal consciousness descended once again. What is it? Xuan flipped his palm, and the jade bottle containing the 3 light divine water appeared in his palm once again. This disciple observes that Master's injuries are heavy. Although you are undergoing nirvana, the speed is ultimately a bit slow. Xuan unplugged the bottle, and a strange, fragrant scent that made the heavens and earth lose their color instantly drifted out. This disciple has a type of divine water here, named 3 light divine water, which is condensed from the essence of the sun, moon, and stars. It specializes in treating origin Tao wounds and might be able to help Master recover as quickly as possible. The willow branches paused slightly. A trace of fluctuation flashed within Willow Deity's consciousness. It could feel the terrifying energy contained within that small bottle. That was not ordinary water, it was a precious Tao liquid containing the vitality of creation. Such a divine object. Willow Deity just wanted to say it was too precious and tell Xuan to keep it for himself. But Xuan didn't give it a chance to refuse at all. Master, please use it. Xuan flicked his wrist. Splash! This time it was not 1 drop. He directly poured out a small stream, about a dozen drops or so. The golden sunlight divine water, silver moonlight divine water, and purple starlight divine water intertwined together, transforming into a brilliant 3-colored rainbow light that splashed directly onto that charred trunk. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The moment the 3 light divine water touched the trunk, it was completely absorbed by the withered trunk. Immediately after, thump, a muffled, thunderous sound, as if it were the heartbeat of the earth, transmitted from inside the tree stump. The sound was heavy and powerful, shaking the ground under Xuan's feet until it trembled slightly. Cracks, crack. Cracking sounds rang out densely. He saw that the charred tree bark, which had endured endless years and was as hard as iron, was now actually beginning to crack and peel off in large areas. Large pieces of dead black skin fell to the ground, turning into dust. And beneath that peeled-off dead skin, a tender, jade-white, crystalline new trunk was revealed. A life essence so majestic it was indescribable, erupted with a boom like a volcanic eruption. Boom! Green light shot up into the sky, directly piercing through the clouds in the firmament. On the previously bare trunk, countless tender buds emerged at a speed visible to the naked eye. Sprouting, growing, hanging down. In a single breath. The tree stump that originally only had 1 willow branch had now actually grown hundreds of brand new branches. These branches were entirely emerald green, as if carved from divine jade, each one emitting brilliant chains of order. They danced in the air, weaving into a green divine waterfall, shrouding the entire Shi village in a sacred and peaceful radiance. At the same time, a vast, boundless torrent of memories, nourished by the 3 light divine water, broke through the fog of nirvana and returned to Willow Deity's sea of consciousness. Memory restored. The once immortal king giant, the once ancestral sacrificial spirit who had killed until no one in the world dared to claim supremacy, had at this moment regained her memories. Strange phenomena manifested. Xuan and the people of Shi village, who had been startled, all involuntarily raised their heads to look at that willow tree. In their field of vision, that was no longer a tree. It was a towering deity. Around the willow tree, space distorted, manifesting 3,000 bizarre and colorful orbs of light. Each orb of light was a vast, great world. Within those 3,000 worlds, countless gods and demons were roaring, and countless living beings were worshipping. They were all kowtowing and worshipping piously in the same direction, toward this willow tree. 3,000 divine kingdoms, 10,000 spirits worshipping. This grand scene deeply shocked everyone present. Lord Sacrificial Spirit has manifested. This is a miracle, this is a true miracle. Old Chief Xunfeng trembled all over with excitement, threw away the cane in his hand, and knelt directly on the ground. The other villagers did not hesitate in the slightest. Regardless of age or gender, they knelt down toward the willow tree one after another, their eyes filled with fanaticism and awe. Chapter 8 Willow Deity transmits the method, breakthrough to the spirit transformation realm. Xuan stood at the very front, watching this shocking phenomenon, his Chaos Double Pupils flickering. Is this the aura of an immortal king giant? Although he did not kneel, his body felt a tremendous pressure. It was an absolute suppression of life hierarchy. But he smiled. The stronger the Willow Deity was, the more secure his backing in this world would be. These dozen or so drops of 3 light divine water were well worth it. A long time passed. The phenomenon covering the sky gradually receded. The 3,000 divine kingdoms faded into the void realm, leaving only hundreds of crystalline willow branches swaying gently in the wind. Although it still appeared to be just a tree, its essential aura had completely changed. If it had previously been a candle in the wind, it was now a raging fire. Little ones, thank you. The Willow Deity's voice sounded once more. This time it was no longer ethereal and indifferent, but carried a hint of warmth, even a touch of an elder's affection for a junior. The voice resonated directly in Xuan's heart, like a spring breeze brushing against his face. It knew very well that if not for Xuan's few drops of heaven-defying divine water, it would have needed to settle in the great wilderness for at least a decade, or even longer, to recover to its current state. This karma was too great. Xuan bowed slightly, his expression humble. Master, you are too polite. Since this disciple has entered the sect, it is my duty to show filial piety to my master. As long as it helps with master's recovery, this disciple is satisfied. Not claiming credit, not arrogance. The Willow Deity became increasingly satisfied with this newly accepted disciple. Outstanding talent, abundant resources, and more importantly, a steady heart nature and respect for the master. You are very good. A willow branch brushed lightly, and a green light fell, enveloping Xuan. Since you have become my disciple, I will no longer hold anything back. You possess an innate physique with an incredibly profound foundation, yet you are a blank slate regarding the application of cultivation. Today, I will teach you the cultivation system of this world, as well as my own method. As the voice fell, countless golden runes flew out from the willow branches, like stars filling the sky, and drilled into the center of Xuan's brows. That was the entire profound truth regarding the perfect world cultivation system. From the blood-moving realm, cave heaven's spirit transformation realm, all the way to the inscription realm, array formation, and even venerable divine fire. Every point of cultivation for each realm, every breakthrough technique for each hurdle, down to the smallest detail, was imprinted into Xuan's mind. Immediately after, there was a primitive rune, entirely emerald green and shaped like a willow leaf. The moment the rune appeared, the Kai and blood within Xuan's body began to tremble involuntarily. A domineering concept, both endless and containing the destruction and rebirth of life, exploded in his sea of consciousness. Willow Deity Method. This was the supreme divine ability that the Willow Deity kept hidden. It governs vitality and also governs slaughter. Once mastered, one's vitality is as tenacious as vegetation in spring, and one's attack power is as domineering as a divine whip splitting the heavens. Focus your mind and comprehend. The Willow Deity's voice guided him. Xuan closed his eyes and sat cross-legged under the tree. His Chaos Double Pupils spun wildly beneath his eyelids, with Chaos Kai circulating. Others might need years or even decades to grasp the basics of the Willow Deity method. Because this method was too profound, involving the origin of the Tao of life. But Xuan was different. He possessed the Chaos Double Pupils and was born with the ability to see through the origin of all things. In his vision, that complex primitive rune was rapidly dismantled. Each Tao pattern was peeled away, transforming into the simplest and most direct stream of information. So that's how it is. To survive, one must first face death. To nurture vitality, one must find it amidst destruction. Only the time it takes to drink a cup of tea had passed. A faint green light suddenly appeared on Xuan's body. Behind him, a blurry phantom of a willow tree slowly emerged. Although it was still faint, it already possessed its form and spirit. Ahem. The willow deity's hundreds of branches paused simultaneously. So fast. Even though it knew Xuan was exceptionally gifted, it had not expected it to be this exaggerated. Mastering the basics of the willow deity method in the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. This comprehension ability was simply unreasonable. But Xuan did not stop. Having grasped the method, the next step was breakthrough. The innate spiritual Kai within his body had long accumulated to a terrifying level, like a dam filled with water, lacking only a floodgate to release it. Now the floodgate was open. Blood-moving realm, rise. Xuan shouted inwardly. Rumble. The blood within his body boiled instantly, emitting the roar of rushing rivers. Without needing to deliberately move it, that innate spiritual Kai instantly transformed into rolling divine radiance, merging into every drop of blood. Blood-moving realm, early stage, middle stage, late stage, perfection. It was almost in the blink of an eye. Xuan's single-arm strength broke through 100,000 jin. But he did not stop. This was just the foundation. Cave heaven, open. Xuan stood up abruptly and let out a long shout. Hum! The void realm trembled. Above his head, a cave heaven resembling a volcanic crater appeared out of thin air. Inside the cave heaven, red clouds spewed forth, and thousands of auspicious rays shone, as if connecting to an immortal realm. Immediately after, the second, the third. Those cave heavens, which seemed as difficult as ascending to the heavens for ordinary cultivators, popped up one after another for Xuan, just like blowing bubbles. In the blink of an eye, 9 cave heavens lay behind Xuan, connected in a circle like a divine ring. This was already the limit for prodigies in the lower realm. But Xuan's expression remained relaxed, even somewhat unsatisfied. Still not enough. He thought of the lump of 9 heavens breathing soil bestowed by Nuwa when she created humanity. 10th cave heaven, open for me. Boom! A loud explosion erupted within Xuan's body. The 10th cave heaven was forcefully squeezed out. The 10 cave heavens appeared together, resonating with each other, divine radiance intertwining, making Xuan look like a young heavenly emperor. The people of Shi village were already stunned. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng opened his mouth wide, his jaw nearly dislocated. 10 cave heavens, the legendary 10 cave heavens. Heavens, am I dreaming? The young immortal master is just too fierce, right? However, Xuan still did not stop. The 10 cave heavens were not his destination, but merely his stepping stone. He could feel the power within his body still gushing. That innate foundation was too profound, and simply opening 10 cave heavens could not consume it all. Since that's the case, then go one step further. Spirit transformation realm. Xuan formed hand seals, and the 10 cave heavens suddenly shrank, beginning to feed back into his physical body. Physical body becomes spiritual. Spirit becomes spiritual. His body began to become crystalline, his bones and internal organs all glowing, as if evolving toward a higher life form. A spiritual radiance rushed out from the top of his head. Spirit transformation realm achieved. Only until this step did Xuan feel the bloated sensation in his body slightly ease. He took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the urge to continue breaking through. Although he could still charge toward the inscription realm, doing so might make his foundation unstable. On the path of Tao, the foundation must be solid. 2. Xuan slowly exhaled a breath of turbid air. The airflow was like a sword, shooting out 3 zhang, blasting a deep pit into the ground. He retracted his aura, and the 10 cave heavens behind him slowly faded away. He opened his eyes. The divine light in his Chaos Double Pupils was restrained, adding a sense of unfathomable composure. From a mortal who only knew how to use brute force to an expert in the spirit transformation realm. He only used the time it takes to eat a meal. Thank you, Master, for transmitting the method. Xuan bowed to the willow tree once again. The willow deity was silent for a moment, seemingly digesting this overly shocking scene as well. A long time later, the willow branches swayed gently, and a sigh with a hint of complexity came forth. Your talent. Truly heaven-defying. All around, the villagers of She Village remained in their stunned postures. They looked at the youth standing under the tree, dressed in animal skins, with only one thought in their minds. Is this still a human? Could this be a god's reincarnation? Chapter 9, Observing the Supreme Bone, Comprehending the Reincarnation Precious Technique. At this moment, the flames beneath that massive black gold cauldron finally extinguished. The medicinal liquid had reached the bottom. The originally boiling soup had now become clear as water, and all its essence had been completely absorbed by that tiny body. Splash! A sound of water rang out. A small figure jumped out of the large cauldron and landed steadily on the ground. It was Shihao. After the baptism of the three-light divine water and the nirvana of the supreme bone, the little fellow's appearance had changed drastically. His skin was crystal clear, resembling the finest mutton-fat white jade, with a faint halo shimmering beneath it. His originally thin little frame had become much sturdier. Although he still looked like a nursing baby, his spirit and vitality were like the rising morning sun, so vibrant that one dared not look directly at him. Shihao let out a long breath of white kai. This breath remained condensed and did not disperse, shooting out 3 feet like a sharp arrow, making a hissing sound in the air. Late stage of the blood-moving realm. Even without deliberately testing it, everyone from She Village present could feel the terrifying power contained within this child's body. Little one, how do you feel? Captain Shilinhu leaned in and asked with a concerned expression. Shihao blinked his large eyes and clenched his little fist, feeling the seemingly inexhaustible strength within his body. I feel like my strength has increased a lot. He looked left and right, his gaze locking onto the black gold cauldron that had just been used to boil him. This cauldron had been left behind by the ancestors of She Village. It weighed tens of thousands of jin, and usually it required several strong men working together to move it even a fraction. Shihao walked over on his short little legs. He did not use any special stance. He simply reached out with his chubby little hands and grabbed one of the cauldron's legs. Up, a soft, childish shout. There were no fancy movements, nor any struggle that caused his face to turn red. Boom! That incredibly heavy black gold cauldron was lifted high above his head with such ease. He even supported the bottom of the cauldron with one hand and spun around twice, as if playing with a slightly larger toy. Hee, it's so light, Shihao grinned, revealing a set of pearly white baby teeth. Clang! He casually threw the cauldron onto the ground, causing the earth to tremble and dust to fly. The entire scene fell silent. Captain Shilinhu's jaw practically hit the ground. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng was so excited that he pulled out a few strands of his beard. This must be 30 or 40,000 jin, right? Lifting a cauldron with one arm, and so easily. What kind of monster has our village produced? The villagers were amazed, although they had previously seen Xuan's monstrous performance and had some psychological preparation. But that was Xuan. He was the disciple of the Willow deity, a godlike figure. Yet little one was a child they had watched grow up. Yesterday he was still drinking milk, and today he could lift a cauldron with one hand. The contrast was simply too great. Big brother Xuan, ignoring the shocked gazes around him, Shihao patted the dust off his hands and rushed in front of Xuan like a happy little bird. Thank you, big brother. The little fellow tilted his head up, his eyes sparkling with admiration and gratitude. Although he was young, he was very clear in his heart. If it weren't for that drop of miraculous, sweet water given by Xuan, he would have continued to suffer from that old injury for a long time, let alone possess such great strength as he did now. Xuan looked at the adorable, doll-like little dumpling before him, a gentle smile curling the corners of his lips. He reached out and rubbed that fluffy little head. It felt really good. "Why be so polite with me?" Xuan said with a smile, his tone filled with doting affection. "I am your big brother, after all. Since you've acknowledged me as your big brother, whether we are in this great wilderness or go outside, Big Brother will look after you. Whoever dares to bully you, I will beat them up for you." He said these words with complete sincerity. Although the future Emperor Huang would be invincible, the path he had to walk was truly too bitter. Since he had come, he naturally had to help share some of the storms for this younger brother. Mshihao nodded heavily, feeling warm in his heart. Except for grandfather clan chief, no one had ever treated him this well. By the way, Xuan changed the subject, his gaze falling onto Shihao's chest. Although it was covered by clothes in Xuan's perception, he could still feel a dormant, supreme and noble aura. "Your supreme bone has recovered, how do you feel now?" This was the question Xuan cared about the most. The nirvana of the supreme bone would inevitably give birth to a new precious technique. In the original story, the supreme bone after Shihao's nirvana gave birth to supreme divine ability involving the domain of time, reincarnation. He wondered if the supreme bone, catalyzed by the three-light divine water, would have any differences. Hearing Xuan's question, Shihao scratched the back of his head, looking a bit confused. Feeling, he lowered his head and pulled open his collar to take a look. "It doesn't seem like there's any special feeling. It's just that my chest feels hot, and also," Shihao furrowed his little brows, struggling to organize his words. "When I close my eyes, I can see many shining runes moving on that bone. They are spinning around as if telling a story, but I don't really understand them right now." It was normal not to understand. After all, he had just stepped into the blood-moving realm, and his understanding of runes was still at the most basic stage. The original runes on the supreme bone were too profound. They were the embodiment of the Tao. Runes, huh? Xuan's eyes brightened slightly, and a strong desire to explore rose in his heart. That was the reincarnation precious technique. A single glance spanning 10,000 years, stripping away time. Among the many precious techniques in the perfect world, this was definitely a top-ranking, heaven-defying method. If he could learn this, wouldn't he have another trump card for the Primordial World? Thinking of this, Xuan no longer hesitated. "Little one," Xuan squatted down, his gaze level with Shihao's. "Can you let Big Brother see those runes of yours? Big Brother wants to observe your supreme bone." This was only because it was Xuan. If anyone else had proposed to see the supreme bone, old chief Shi Yunfeng would probably have just hit them with his cane. This was Shihao's greatest secret and his biggest trump card. But Shihao had no defenses against Xuan. "Okay," he agreed promptly and cleanly. Without any hesitation, Shihao directly pulled open the beastskin collar on his chest, revealing the newly grown skin. Beneath that tender skin, a lustrous white bone was emitting a soft divine radiance. Although it was only the size of a fingernail, the patterns on it were complex to the extreme. Densely packed runes flowed across the bone's surface, as if containing the ultimate truths of the birth and death of the universe's stars. "This is the supreme bone after nirvana." Xuan held his breath, his eyes becoming incredibly solemn. Double pupil open, a low shout in his heart. Xuan's eyes changed instantly. The originally black and white eyes disappeared, replaced by two overlapping pupils of chaos. Grey mist surged in his eye sockets, and two substantive gazes fell directly onto Shihao's chest. Boom! In the vision of the double pupil, the world changed. That small piece of bone was instantly magnified countless times in Xuan's eyes. Those originally obscure and difficult to understand runes were now dismantled into clear lines of law. Xuan saw it. He saw a long river flowing on the surface of the bone. That was not water, that was the years, that was time. At one end of the long river was a vibrant baby. At the other end of the long river was a withered skeleton of old age. Life and death alternated at this moment. Time flowed and the years shifted. This was reincarnation. Chapter 10, Heaven-Defying Comprehension Ability, Willow Deity is surprised. How domineering this precious technique is. At this moment, Xuan felt a shock in his heart. The core of this precious technique was to control time and deprive life. It forced the enemy to experience the process from youth to old age in an instant, directly slaying them with the power of time. This was simply a heaven-defying level skill. Xuan did not dare to be negligent, and immediately mobilized all his mental focus to begin fully analyzing this precious technique. If it were anyone else, even those leaders in the upper realm, wanting to comprehend the original runes on this supreme bone, would likely require years or even decades of secluded cultivation. Because this involved the law of time, one of the most obscure and difficult Taoes to understand. But Xuan was different. He possessed the Chaos Double Pupils. The heavy pupils were divine objects that could see through illusions and point directly to the origin. Coupled with his soul of the innate human race, his comprehension ability was naturally heaven-defying. With the two superimposed, the effect was astonishing. Those complex runes rapidly reorganized and evolved in his eyes. Once, twice, 3 times. As time passed, the chaos Kai flowing in Xuan's eyes turned faster and faster. In his sea of consciousness, a mysterious symbol gradually emerged. That symbol looked like the character life, and also like the character death, finally connecting head to tail to form a ring. Reincarnation ring. Understood. After a while, Xuan slowly closed his eyes, covering the strange phenomenon in them. When he opened his eyes again, a trace of vicissitudes appeared in the depths of those heavy pupils, as if he had just experienced a lifetime of reincarnation. So this is the reincarnation precious technique. Xuan stood up and looked at his right hand. He wanted to verify it. With a thought, the profound truth of the runes he had just comprehended circulated instantly within his body. There was no stiffness at all, as if he had practiced this precious technique millions of times. A strange light suddenly appeared on Xuan's palm. The light was not gold, nor was it silver, but a color interwoven with gray and white, carrying a palpitating aura of time. Xuan turned his head and looked at a wild grass by the roadside. It was a tender blade of grass that had just grown, dripping with emerald green and full of vitality. He stretched out his hand and pressed gently towards the wild grass from a distance. Reincarnation. 2 words were softly uttered. The next second, a weird scene happened. In full view of everyone, that originally tender green grass began to wither at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its leaves curled, moisture was lost, and its roots shrank. In the blink of an eye, it had completed the journey of a lifetime, turning from a tender blade of grass into a pile of withered grass clippings, eventually turning into dust and scattering with the wind. Depriving time. Although it was only used on a blade of grass, the implication was enough to make any expert shudder. This, old Chief Shi Yunfeng felt his scalp tingle. Although he didn't understand what kind of precious technique this was, he could feel the terror of that moment. If that strike had been pressed onto a person, he didn't dare to think about it. Under the willow tree at the entrance of the village, Willow Deity, who had been silently watching this side, had those hundreds of branches slightly stall for a moment. She was silent. Of course, she recognized what this was. This was a natural-born divine ability spawned by the Supreme Bone, one of the top divine abilities in the world. Generally speaking, this kind of precious technique could only be performed by the person who possessed the Supreme Bone. It was as difficult as ascending to heaven for an outsider to learn it. But Xuan, he learned it just after looking at it a few times. And looking at the move he just performed, although the power was still weak, the charm of that law clearly showed he had already mastered the core essence. This child's comprehension ability. A ripple arose in Willow Deity's consciousness. Truly heaven-defying. Or is it because of the blessing of those Chaos Double Pupils? Heavy pupils observing the Supreme Bone, actually able to produce such a wonderful reaction. For the first time, Willow Deity felt that the future of this cheap disciple would likely exceed its imagination. This was not taking in a disciple. This was clearly picking up a prodigy. Xuan withdrew his hand, looking at the lingering aura of time on his palm, and nodded with satisfaction. The reincarnation precious technique was a success. Although limited by his cultivation base now, he could only deprive the time of some flowers and plants. But as his cultivation base improved, the power of this precious technique would increase geometrically. At that time, facing those Yao race with long lifespans in the great wilderness. Hey so. Xuan looked at the ignorant-looking little Shihao and rubbed his head again. Little one, the thing on your bone is very powerful. When you understand it in the future, you will be stronger than Big Brother. Little Shihao nodded, half understandingly. As long as I can help Big Brother, that's good. Xuan laughed. This trip to the perfect world was a huge profit. Not only did he pay respects to Willow Deity and learn the Willow Deity method, now even the reincarnation precious technique had been tricked. Oh no, learned. Time passed like sand between fingers, silently slipping away. For the next 3 days, Shi Village seemed exceptionally quiet. Every morning, when the first ray of purple light came from the east, Xuan sat cross-legged under the charred willow tree at the entrance of the village. Willow branches swayed gently, and ethereal Tao sounds echoed in his sea of consciousness. That was Willow Deity preaching, explaining the essence of cultivation and the true meaning of life and destruction. Xuan listened with fascination. He possessed the Chaos Double Pupils, and his comprehension ability was naturally heaven-defying. Now with an immortal king giant personally feeding him, his cultivation progress could be described as advancing by leaps and bounds. The 10 cave heavens in his body had long been stabilized, floating in the void realm behind him like 10 small suns. As his comprehension of the Willow Deity method and reincarnation precious technique deepened, the spiritual power in his body began to undergo a qualitative change. Spiritual power took form, gathering and dispersing at will. This was the hallmark of the spirit transformation realm. While listening to the Tao, the aura in Xuan's body naturally rose, breaking through that membrane as if water flowing into a channel. Middle stage of the spirit transformation realm, late stage, until perfection. In just 3 short days, Xuan had been promoted to the perfection of the spirit transformation realm. If this was spread out, it would be enough to make those first-generation prodigies of the upper realm die of shame and anger. On this day, the sunshine was just right. Xuan finished his cultivation and stood up, his bones making cracking sounds like popping beans. He felt that his current state was unprecedentedly good, and every move he made seemed to be able to influence the trend of the world. Two. He exhaled a breath of turbid air and glanced at the empty martial arts arena. Usually at this time, that group of Pai who should be grunting and lifting stones. Especially little Shihao, who practiced more diligently than anyone else for that mouthful of beast milk. But today, the village was unusually quiet. It's not good, not good. From afar came the anxious cry of Captain Shilinhu. This man ran over, drenched in sweat, holding a broken stone axe in his hand. What happened? Xuan frowned slightly. Little one took Pai Hu Meng and the others and secretly snuck out. Captain Shilinhu said panting, the trap at the entrance of the village has been destroyed, and looking at the footprints, they went deep into the great wilderness. Xuan heard this and rubbed his eyebrows helplessly. Sure enough. Bear child, this kind of creature, no matter which world they are in, regardless of whether they have a supreme bone or not, that instinct to court death is carved into their bones. Chapter 11, Great Wilderness Training, Subduing the Green-Scaled Eagle. The clan chief and the others are frantic and are preparing to organize a search party, Captain Shilinhu said with a worried expression. That is the depths of the great wilderness, if they happen to encounter even one vicious beast. These children will. Don't worry. Xuan patted Captain Shilinhu's shoulder, his tone calm. I will go and bring them back. Before his voice had even faded, Xuan tapped his toes against the ground. Boom! The ground trembled slightly, leaving behind an afterimage. In the depths of the great wilderness, ancient trees towered into the sky. This was the territory of vicious beasts, filled with primitive bloodlust and slaughter. At this moment, a group of children was sprinting through the forest. Running at the very front was little one, Shihao. He was cradling a large, jade-green egg in his arms. The egg was bigger than his own head and covered in scale-like patterns. "Run quickly, the big guy is chasing us," Shihao shouted in his milky voice, his short legs moving fast. Although he was young, he was already in the late stage of the blood-moving realm, and his speed was even faster than the cubs of those ancient descendant species. Behind him, Pai Hu Meng and the other children were also red-faced and panting, each clutching 2 bird eggs to their chests as they ran for their lives. The screech, a piercing cry that could shatter gold and crack stone, came from high above. Immediately after, a terrifying gust of wind followed. A massive shadow instantly enveloped the forest. It was a green-scaled eagle. Its wingspan was over 10 meters wide, and its body was covered in green scales that shimmered with a chilling cold light under the sun. Those sharp eagle eyes were locked onto the few little ones below, filled with monstrous rage. Those were its eggs. It had only gone out to forage for a little while, yet some 2-legged beasts dared to steal its children. Whoosh! The green-scaled eagle swooped down. Its massive talons, as if cast from steel, easily shattered the rocks and ancient trees in its path. It's over, it's caught up," Pai Hu screamed in terror. "Split up and run," Shihao shouted, clutching the egg as he dove into a pile of rocks on the other side. He wanted to lure the vicious beast away. But the green-scaled eagle had long since locked onto this little one with the strongest aura. It flapped its wings, whipping up a violent gale that uprooted the surrounding trees. The terrifying wind pressure caused Shihao's movements to falter. Just at this critical moment, the talons had already reached above his head, the cold light stinging his skin. "Vile creature, cease your harm." A clear, resonant voice suddenly rang out in midair. Immediately after, a slender palm appeared out of thin air. The palm looked fair and fragile, yet it steadily blocked the green-scaled eagle's talons, which were capable of crushing mountains. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. Airwaves rolled, and the surrounding vegetation instantly turned to powder. The green-scaled eagle felt as if it had slammed into a primeval sacred mountain. The massive recall force caused it to let out a mournful cry, and its huge body was actually sent flying, tumbling several times in the air before it could barely stabilize itself. The dust settled. A figure in white floated quietly in midair, robes fluttering, looking like an immortal descended from the heavens. "Big's big brother." Shihao, clutching the egg, poked his little head out from the rock pile. Seeing that familiar back, his large eyes instantly lit up. "Big brother Xuan." The other children also stopped in their tracks, shouting in surprise. Xuan turned around and glared at them irritably. "I'll deal with you all when we get back." Afterward, he turned his head to look at the green-scaled eagle, which had regained its balance. The green-scaled eagle was now circling at a low altitude, staring at Xuan with wary eyes. As a variant possessing the bloodline of a primeval demonic bird, its intelligence was not low, and it could sense the terror of the human youth before it. Despite his small stature, his body contained power that made it tremble. Screech! It let out an unwilling cry, but dared not attack rashly, only staring fixedly at the eggs in the children's arms. Xuan glanced at the 3 jade-green bird eggs, understanding in his heart. These were the 3 mutated green-scaled eagle cubs from the original story, and they would become important companions for Shihao in the early stages. "We have no intention of taking your life." Xuan spoke, his voice mixed with the divine thought of the spirit transformation realm, directly transmitting into the green-scaled eagle's mind. "We will return your children to you." Upon hearing this, the fierce light in the green-scaled eagle's eyes subsided slightly, but it remained vigilant. However, Xuan changed the subject, his dual pupils glowing slightly, chaos chi swirling within them, emitting a pressure of a superior being originating from the depths of his bloodline. "The great wilderness is perilous. With 3 children in tow, you may not be able to protect them. Submit to me." Not only will I ensure the safety of you and your offspring, but I can also grant your children a great fortune, giving them a chance to undergo ancestral reversion and recreate the glory of the primeval demonic bird. The green-scaled eagle trembled all over. Ancestral reversion. This was something all ancient descendant species dreamed of. It looked into Xuan's dual pupils, deep as the abyss, which seemed to contain the mysteries of the creation of the world. Its instinct told it that this human was not lying. Moreover, it had already tested his depth with that one strike just now. If it did not submit, it would be effortless for the other party to kill it. After a moment of silence, the green-scaled eagle folded its wings and slowly landed on the ground. It lowered its proud head and let out a submissive, low cry. Consider yourself wise. Xuan's lips curled slightly. His figure flashed, and he landed on the green-scaled eagle's broad back. All of you get up here, you little rascals. Xuan beckoned to the bear children below, who were still in a daze. Wow, we're riding a big bird. Shihao was the first to react, scrambling up onto the eagle's back while clutching his egg. The other children also shrieked with excitement, climbing up using their hands and feet. This was a green-scaled eagle, the aerial hegemon of the great wilderness. Before, they would have been scared to the point of wetting their pants upon seeing one, and now they could actually ride on its back. This was a story they could brag about for a lifetime. Let's go back to the village. Xuan patted the green-scaled eagle's neck. The green-scaled eagle spread its wings, and a violent wind instantly arose, carrying everyone as it soared into the sky, flying toward Shi village. High above, the wind howled. The bear children were shouting excitedly, watching the mountain forest rapidly receding beneath their feet, their faces flushed with excitement. Xuan sat cross-legged at the very front of the eagle's back, but he was not as relaxed as they were. All of you, shut up, Xuan said calmly. The children instantly quieted down, each shrinking their necks like little quails that had made a mistake. Did you know you were wrong? We know, Shihao hugged the egg, lowered his head and said in a small voice, we shouldn't have snuck out and made clan chief Grandpa worry. And what else? We shouldn't have provoked such a powerful vicious beast. Not only that. Xuan pointed to the vast great wilderness below. Your courage has grown, but your strength is not yet enough. If I had arrived one step later, these 3 eggs would have been your burial items. Remember, courage is not recklessness. If you want to survive in the great wilderness, having strength alone is not enough. You must also have brains. The children listened, appearing to understand only half of it, but they all nodded obediently. Xuan didn't say anything more. Some lessons have to be experienced by themselves. Just at this moment, a roar that shook the heavens and earth came from the mountain range ahead. The sound was like thunder, shaking the green-scaled eagle's body, almost causing it to tumble out of the sky. Chapter 12, Scavenging the Xuani Body, Mastering the Xuani Precious Technique. What is going on? The children were pale with fear. A sharp light flashed in Xuan's eyes. Stop! He signaled the green-scaled eagle to lower its altitude, restrain its aura, and land behind a hidden cliff. Through the gaps in the jagged rocks, the scene below was fully visible. In the distance within the valley, dust filled the sky, and gravel shattered into the clouds. 3 behemoths were engaged in a life-and-death struggle. The vicious beasts currently locked in a life-and-death struggle were all overlords of the great wilderness. One of them, entirely golden as if cast from gold, was none other than the Xuani. However, this old Xuani was in terrible condition, covered in blood with a withered aura, clearly at the point where its lifespan was exhausted. And opposite it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribers, and share to Infinite Novel Audio. A pitch-black demonic ape, wielding a massive bone club, was waving its weapon frantically, each strike causing the earth to crack. On the other side, a Lee-fire ox demon, its body burning with crimson flames, stomped its 4 hooves and breathed out intense fire capable of melting rock. The 2 vicious beasts joined forces to besiege the dying old Xuani. It's a Xuan, an ancient descendant species. Meng exclaimed in shock and quickly covered his mouth. Xuan narrowed his eyes. This old Xuani's lifespan was coming to an end, and it had wanted to find a place to pass away, only to have its enemies track it down. This old Xuan is about to die. Xuan saw it clearly. Although the old Xuan was still resisting desperately, and even erupted with terrifying thunder power, scorching one of the demonic ape's arms to black, it was merely a final flash of vitality. Boom! Another violent collision occurred. The old Xuan let out a final, mournful roar as the thunder runes within its body erupted completely. The demonic ape and the Lee Fire Ox demon were terrified by this aura of mutual destruction, fearing they would be taken down by its final counterattack. They turned and fled, disappearing into the depths of the dense forest in the blink of an eye. The valley returned to silence. The old Xuani's massive body collapsed with a crash, its golden pupils gradually losing their luster as its last bit of life force dissipated with the wind. A generation's overlord had come to an end. They left. Captain Shilinhu's son Da Zhuang scratched his head. They don't want the corpse. They were scared off, thinking the Xuan was about to self-destruct. Xuan stood up and brushed the dust off his body. Truly, he who does not take what heaven gives will suffer the consequences. Green-scaled, go down. The green-scaled eagle chirped excitedly. That was the corpse of a Xuan. For it, this was also a great tonic. It tucked its wings and, like a bolt of green lightning, swooped down and landed steadily in the center of the valley. Xuan jumped off the eagle's back and walked to the side of the Xuan's corpse. Even in death, the body still radiated terrifying heat and pressure. Ordinary beasts dared not approach it at all. Xuan reached out and pressed his hand against the Xuan's forehead. It was scalding hot to the touch. It's well preserved. Xuan nodded with satisfaction. It seems this time, not only did I find the bear children, but I also scavenged a huge treasure. He grabbed one of the Xuan's giant feet with one hand and gave a powerful heave. Up! The massive body, weighing over 100,000 jin, was thrown directly onto the back of the green-scaled eagle. The green-scaled eagle's body sank, nearly collapsing to the ground, and it let out a low, protesting cry. Stop complaining, I'll share a leg with you when we get back. At Xuan's words, the green-scaled eagle immediately perked up, flapped its wings vigorously, and carrying the mountain of meat and the group of children, wobbled as it took flight into the sky. I see village. The setting sun dyed the entire village gold. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng, along with all the men and villagers, was anxiously waiting at the village entrance. It's been half a day, why haven't they returned yet? Could something have happened? Just as everyone was burning with anxiety, a huge shadow was suddenly cast across the sky. Look, what is that? Someone pointed at the sky in terror. A massive green vicious beast was swooping down toward the village, its huge body blocking out the sky and bringing with it a suffocating sense of pressure. It's a green-scaled eagle. Everyone grab your weapons, prepare for battle. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng roared, and the bone runes in his hand lit up. However, the next second, everyone was stunned, because they saw that on the back of the vicious beast, there were actually a group of familiar figures sitting there. And a golden mountain of meat. Boom! The green-scaled eagle landed on the open space at the village entrance, kicking up a cloud of dust. Xuan jumped down first, looking relaxed. Following him, little Shihao and the other bear children slid down. Although they were covered in dust, they were in high spirits. Grandpa Clan Chief, we're back. Little Shihao hugged the large, emerald green egg and rushed toward Old Chief Shi Yunfeng like he was presenting a treasure. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng stared blankly at the green-scaled eagle, which was lying docilely behind Xuan, and then looked at the massive corpse on the eagle's back that was radiating the aura of thunder. Is this a Xuan? Has this green-scaled eagle been tamed? The villagers were all petrified. Going out for one trip, they not only brought the children back, but also brought back an aerial overlord as a mount. and incidentally brought back the corpse of an ancient descendant species. This was simply too outrageous. Little immortal master, this. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng was so excited he was incoherent. We were lucky we scavenged it on the way. Xuan said nonchalantly. Let's unload this thing first and process it while it's fresh. Xuan casually dragged the Xuani's corpse down and tossed it onto the threshing ground. Captain Shi Linhu, take some men to boil water and set up the pots. Tonight the whole village eats meat. All right. Captain Shi Linhu was so excited his face turned red, and he called the men over to start working. As Xuani, they had never eaten such high-level meat in their entire lives. During the process of dismembering the Xuani, a surprise arrived once again. When Captain Shi Linhu carefully dissected the Xuani's skull, a crystal-clear golden bone, radiating complex runes, fell out. Precious bone, it's an original precious bone. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng held the bone, his hands trembling. It actually didn't self-destruct. Ancient descendant species usually shatter their precious bones before death so as not to leave them for their enemies. Being able to obtain a complete original precious bone was harder than ascending to heaven. It seems the luck of Shi village has arrived. Xuan walked over and picked up the precious bone to examine it. He activated his heavy pupils. Those complex Thunder Dao runes rapidly decomposed and reorganized in his eyes. After only a few glances, a golden electric arc jumped up in Xuan's palm. The Xuani precious technique was mastered in an instant. He handed the precious bone to old Chief Shi Yunfeng. Clan Chief, keep this bone safe. From now on, it will be the village's legacy precious technique. Let the children learn it. Having one more skill means one more path. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng was moved to tears and carefully put the precious bone away. After dealing with the Xuani, Xuan did not rest. He took the green-scaled eagle and the 3 bird eggs to the foot of the willow tree. Master! Xuan bowed respectfully. Although this green-scaled eagle's bloodline is not pure, it can still be considered a descendant of an ancient demonic bird. These 3 eggs even show signs of mutation. If it could receive a bit of Master's fortune, it might be able to revert to its ancestral form. In the future, it could also serve as the guardian beast for Shi village. Willow deity did not speak. The emerald green willow branch dropped gently and brushed over the 3 emerald green bird eggs. A green divine light was injected into the eggs. In an instant, the scale patterns on the eggshells seemed to come alive, beginning to wildly swirl and reorganize. The originally green eggshells actually revealed a faint trace of golden-purple color. That was a sign of bloodline evolution. Chapter 13, Emperor Huang's Dark History, Bay Village's Ambush. Screech, the green-scaled eagle, watching this scene from the side, was so excited that its feathers were trembling all over. It could feel that the life aura within these 3 eggs had become unprecedentedly powerful and noble. It prostrated itself directly on the ground, kowtowing incessantly towards the willow tree, its eyes filled with gratitude. Go, Xuan waved his hand and smiled indifferently. Go into the great wilderness and catch some fresh prey to bring back, nourish your children, and add a meal for the village as well. The green-scaled eagle chirped excitedly, flapped its wings, and soared into the sky. It was now full of vigor, wishing it could capture every vicious beast on the entire mountain to repay the favor. Night fell, the scent of meat wafted throughout Shi village, accompanied by laughter and joy. But amidst this laughter, there were intermittent, miserable wails. Smack, smack, smack. Wah, I won't dare to do it again. Dad, I was wrong. Grandpa, stop hitting me, my butt is blossoming. In a corner of the threshing ground, the bear children, who had just felt like heroes a moment ago, were now being held down on the laps of their respective elders, pants pulled down, and served with the soles of shoes. Sneaking into the great wilderness and provoking the green-scaled eagle had almost cost them their lives. This beating was unavoidable. Although old Chief Shi Yunfeng felt heartache, he hardened his heart and used a small wooden stick to loosen the skin of little Shi Hao. letting you run around, letting you show off. Clan Chief Grandpa, I was wrong, woo woo woo. Little Shihao lay on old Chief Xunfeng's lap, crying while not forgetting to look at the Xuani meat boiling in the pot. Xuan sat not far away, holding a golden, oily roasted Xuani leg in his hand, chewing on it while watching the scene with great interest. Emperor Wong getting spanked, this scene tusk. If this could be recorded and auctioned off in the heavens above later, it could probably be exchanged for several quasi-immortal emperor weapons. This is childhood, Xuan sighed, taking a huge bite of the meat, truly delicious. The next few days were quite peaceful. Xuan had settled down in Shi village, spending his days either cultivating beside the Willow deity or guiding the bear children of the village. On this day, the setting sun was like blood, staining the rolling mountain ranges of the great wilderness a dark red. Evenings in Shi village were supposed to be the liveliest time of the day. Usually at this time, the hunting team would be carrying the massive corpses of vicious beasts, singing ancient chants, and returning in triumph amidst the cheers of the children. The women of the village would set up large pots, boil water, and prepare to welcome their men. But today, the village entrance was deathly silent. The wind blew from the mountains and forests, bringing no scent of game, only a heart-palpitating stench of blood. They're back, the hunting team is back. Pai-Hu, who was keeping watch on the dirt platform, suddenly shouted, but there was no joy in his voice, only terror, and even a sobbing tone. Someone come quickly, Uncle Linhu and the others, they are covered in blood. This shout jolted the entire Shi village awake. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng, who was brewing medicine, trembled, and the medicine spoon fell into the pot. Xuan, who was sitting cross-legged under the willow tree, comprehending the Xuani precious technique, also suddenly opened his eyes. As his heavy pupils opened and closed, a cold glint flashed across them. Something happened. Xuan stood up, his figure flickered, and he instantly appeared at the village entrance. The sight before him caused his expression to darken instantly. The hunting team had returned, but not in triumph, they were fleeing for their lives. Of the dozen or so sturdy men, not one of them could stand straight at this moment. They supported each other, or were even being carried, shuffling into the village one step at a time. Each person was wounded, fresh blood soaking through their animal skin clothes, dripping down their pant legs, dragging striking red trails across the yellow earth. Walking at the very front was the hunting team captain, Captain Shi Linhu. This tough man, who could usually lift 1,000 jin boulder with one hand, now had a face as pale as paper, his lips cracked and purple. His left arm hung limply at his side, it was clearly broken. Even more shocking was the black iron arrow embedded in his back. The arrowhead was buried deep into his flesh, with only half of the arrow shaft exposed, trembling slightly with his breathing. That was the wolf-tooth poison arrow unique to Bei village. Linhu, old Chief Shi Yunfeng, rushed over with his cane, and seeing this scene, his old eyes instantly turned red. What is going on? Who did this? When Captain Shi Linhu saw the clan chief, the taut string inside him finally snapped. His legs gave way, and he nearly collapsed to the ground, but was held up tightly by two clansmen beside him. Clan chief, Captain Shi Linhu's voice was hoarse, as if his throat were filled with sand. The prey is all gone. And Fei Jiao and Meng Zi, their hands. Captain Shi Linhu closed his eyes in pain and pointed to the stretcher behind him. There lay two unconscious men, their entire right arms twisted in a grotesque manner, the bones clearly shattered into bits. They had been forcibly broken by heavy-handed techniques. In the great wilderness, losing an arm meant being crippled. Too bullying, old Chief Shi Yunfeng trembled with rage, striking his cane heavily against the ground. Save them first, hurry, bring the ancestral purple cloud powder, and the remaining Xuani blood. The village descended into chaos. The women cried out and rushed toward their men, while the children were terrified and wailed loudly. Xuan stood in the crowd, not saying a word. He walked behind Captain Shi Linhu and glanced at the iron arrow. He reached out and gripped the arrow shaft. Bear with it, Xuan said in a low voice. Captain Shi Linhu gritted his teeth, veins bulging on his forehead. But Xuan exerted force with his wrist, and the barbed poison arrow was instantly pulled out. A spurt of black blood sprayed out. A massive green light lit up at Xuan's fingertips. It was the life force of the Willow deity method. He pressed his hand onto the wound, and the green light surged in, instantly stopping the bleeding and forcing out the residual poison. Captain Shilinhu let out a muffled groan, his complexion improving slightly. "Tell me what happened." Xuan threw away the bloodied iron arrow, his tone calm, but those who knew him understood that this was the calm before the storm. Captain Shilinhu panted heavily, raging fire burning in his eyes, his teeth chattering with rage. "It was Bay Village, those scumbags. We had originally hunted a one-horned dragon beast and were preparing to return. Who knew that the people of Bay Village had long been lying in ambush on the only path? They were numerous and powerful, they just came up and robbed us. That little brat named Bei Feng." Speaking of this name, Captain Shilinhu's eyes were almost spitting fire. "He is too ruthless, too vicious. He could have clearly shot us to death directly, but he didn't. He held his bow and, like a cat playing with a mouse, specifically shot our joints. He shot our tendons. Feijiao couldn't take it and wanted to rush up to fight for his life, but he ended up getting his shoulder pierced by an arrow from that brat. Then, the clan chief of Bay Village actually had their sacrificial spirit make a move." Sacrificial spirit? Old Chief Xunfeng's heart skipped a beat. "Yes, that old bay," Captain Shilinhu said despairingly. "It hid in the darkness and released just a single burst of pressure, leaving us unable to move, forcing us to watch helplessly as Feijiao and the others had their hands crippled. They stole the prey and even said that the people of Shi Village are all softies, and that they would beat us every time they see us from now on. If it weren't for the need to come back and report this, we would have already fought them to the death." Chapter 14, Xuan's Fury, swearing to destroy Bay Village. After hearing what Captain Shilinhu said, their entire Shi Village fell into a deathly silence. Then anger erupted. "Damn them!" A man picked up a broadsword from the ground, his eyes burning red. "Let's fight them to the death. They dared to cripple my brother's arms, I'm going to chop off their heads. Attack Bay Village, seize back our things." Although the people of Shi Village were simple and honest, they were by no means cowardly. Surviving in this great wilderness, who didn't have a bit of backbone? Who could swallow such an insult, being shat upon by others? Even the women were wiping away tears, while silently sharpening their bone knives, until they were razor-sharp. The crowd was agitated. They were filled with killing intent. However, old Chief Xunfeng hesitated. He looked at his hot-blooded clansmen, then at the severely injured Captain Shilinhu, his face full of worry. "Everyone calm down," Old Chief Xunfeng shouted, suppressing the clamor of the crowd. "We must take revenge, but we cannot go to our deaths. Bay Village has many people, and that Bei Feng is skilled in archery. Most importantly, they have a sacrificial spirit. That old bay has lived for who knows how many years. Its strength is unfathomable. It is likely a vicious beast in the cave heaven realm. If we go, who can stop it?" At the mention of the sacrificial spirit, the anger of the crowd was like being doused with a bucket of cold water. That's right. The sacrificial spirit. It was a godlike existence that protected a village. Although Shi Village had the Willow deity, the Willow deity was currently in nirvana and usually ignored worldly affairs. It was even less likely to follow them to attack another village. Without a sacrificial spirit to suppress the situation, for them to face a vicious beast in the cave heaven realm would be like serving themselves up on a platter. A feeling of despair began to spread. Could they really just swallow this insult? Just then, the crowd automatically parted to make a path. Xuan walked out from behind. He was dressed in white, appearing out of place among the men wearing animal skins, yet no one dared to ignore his presence. He walked up to Captain Shilinhu and looked down at the two clansmen whose arms had been crippled. He activated his double pupil. He could see that the bones of the two men were shattered completely, and their meridians were severed. The malice of the person who did this was extreme. This was an attempt to cut off the roots of the Shi Village hunting team, leaving Shi Village to starve to death this winter. Very well. Xuan nodded, a cold curve appearing at the corner of his mouth. He raised his head, scanning the righteous, indignant, yet helpless villagers. Clan Chief. Xuan looked at old Chief Xunfeng, his voice not loud, but filled with a calmness that made people feel at ease. "Are you worried about that sacrificial spirit?" Old Chief Shi Yunfeng gave a bitter smile. "Little immortal master, that is Old Bei, a monster that has become a spirit. It is just an old yellow weasel." Xuan interrupted him nonchalantly, his tone carrying undisguised disdain. "Hiding in a ditch and shooting cold arrows, what kind of sacrificial spirit is that? Since they want to play, let's play big." Xuan turned around, facing the direction of Bei Village deep in the great wilderness. The evening wind blew his robes, making them rustle. A terrifying aura rose from his body. It was the dignity of a human emperor, and also the invincible conviction he had cultivated in the perfect world. "The people of Shi Village cannot be humiliated. If they injure one of mine, I will break one of their arms. If they cripple two of mine, I will exterminate their entire clan." Xuan turned his head back, his gaze like lightning, sweeping over every young man present. "Bring your weapons. Follow me to war. This time we are not just taking revenge, we are exterminating the clan." Exterminating the clan. Once these words were spoken, everyone felt their scalps tingle and their blood rushing to their heads. They were not going to reason, not going to seek justice. They were going to exterminate a clan. "Good, we listen to little brother Yi. Wipe out those scumbags. I'm going to get my weapon right now." The morale that had been suppressed by the reputation of the sacrificial spirit was instantly ignited to the peak by these two sentences from Xuan. With the little immortal master leading, why be afraid of anything? The little immortal master is a divine being in the spirit transformation realm and the disciple of the Willow deity. The men yelled as they rushed back into their houses, taking out their hidden weapons. The two ancestral artifacts were also brought out at this moment. Just as the team was assembling, a small hand tugged at the corner of Xuan's robe. Xuan looked down. He saw little Shihao looking up at him. The little guy was wearing a small tiger-skin skirt, holding a Xuani precious technique mirror in his hand, which Xuan had forged for him using Xuani precious bones. At this moment, the little guy's big eyes were full of tears and anger. He had just seen the miserable state of Uncle Linhu, who was usually the kindest to him, being carried back. "Big brother." Little Shihao's voice trembled slightly, but it was filled with determination. "I want to go too. I want to use lightning to strike that bad guy. I want to take revenge for Uncle Linhu. If it were any other child, the adults would certainly kick him back and tell him not to cause trouble." But Xuan looked at little Shihao. He saw the battle intent burning in the depths of those pupils. The life of Emperor Huang was forged in blood and fire. A true dragon cannot be raised in a greenhouse. Moreover, the current Shihao was no longer just a baby who only knew how to drink milk. He was in the late stage of the blood-moving realm, capable of lifting tens of thousands of jin with one arm, possessing the supreme bone and the Xuani precious technique. That so-called Bei Feng. He wasn't even fit to tie his shoes. "Good." Xuan reached out, wiped the tears from the corner of little Shihao's eyes, and then rubbed his head heavily. "That little brat who plays with arrows belongs to you. Don't embarrass your big brother." Little Shihao nodded heavily, gripping the glowing Xuani precious technique mirror in his hand. "Let's go." Xuan waved his hand. Under the setting sun, a team filled with killing intent walked out of Shi Village. Target Bei Village. This night the great wilderness was destined to blade. Bei Village was located beneath a steep cliff. The surroundings were walled with huge black rocks, and the walls were topped with sharpened animal bones and iron spears, gleaming coldly in the sunset. "We're here." Xuan stopped and looked up at the tightly closed gate. Behind him, dozens of Shi Village men held broadswords and bone clubs, their eyes red, full of killing intent. The anger that permeated from their bones made the surrounding air feel somewhat frozen. On the walls, a few heads soon poked out. They were the Bei Village clansmen responsible for keeping watch. When they saw the Shi Village team of only a few dozen people below, they were stunned for a moment, then burst into ear-piercing laughter. Yo, aren't these the barbarians from Shi village? What, that Captain Shilin who didn't die? Or is it that you felt you weren't beaten miserably enough last time, and came specifically to offer us the other arms to cripple? Ha 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 ha, look at their pathetic state, are they here to beg for mercy? Mockery sounded one after another. In the eyes of the Bay village people, Shi village, having lost its main force, was meat on the chopping block. In the last battle, not only did they snatch all the prey, they also crippled the strongest hunters of Shi village. The other side was now just a group of toothless tigers. Beg for mercy. Above the gate, a youth wearing silver animal skin armor walked out. His face was effeminate, but his eyes were as vicious as a poisonous snake. He held a black iron bow taller than himself, and on his back was a full quiver of wolf-tooth arrows. It was Bei Feng, the genius of Bay village who had shot and crippled Captain Shi Linhu's arms with cruel methods. Bei Feng looked down at the crowd, his gaze finally falling on Xuan at the front. Chapter 15, Little One shows his might, Old Bei attacks. Ha ha ha, is Shi village empty of people? They actually let a pretty boy lead the team. Bei Feng's mouth curled into a cruel arc as he slowly drew an iron arrow and knocked it onto the bowstring. Since you've come, don't bother leaving. Let's kill the leader first to liven things up. Twang! The sound of the vibrating bowstring was piercingly shrill. The iron arrow, laden with the power of runes, transformed into a black streak of light, heading straight for Xuan's brow. Fast, accurate, ruthless. If this arrow struck, an ordinary person's head would explode like a rotten watermelon. The men of Shi village turned pale, wanting to rush forward to block the arrow, but the distance was too great. It was simply too late. Xuan stood where he was, not even lifting an eyelid. He didn't even have the intention of taking his hands from behind his back. Just as the iron arrow was about to strike Xuan. Bad guy, don't you dare touch my big brother. A milky, angry shout suddenly rang out. A small figure like a young tiger suddenly darted out from Xuan's side. It was none other than little Shi Hao. Facing the poison arrow capable of piercing rock, the little guy neither dodged nor avoided it. He faced the wind, his little face full of seriousness, the supreme bone on his chest beginning to awaken. Although separated by his clothes, it still emitted a heart-palpitating fluctuation. He reached out his chubby little hand and swiped fiercely at the void realm. Crackle! There were no incantations, nor were there any complicated opening stances. A golden thunderbolt burst forth from his palm, without any warning. Although the thunder was small, it was terrifyingly pure, as if it were a drop of water splashed from an ancient thunder pool. Bang! A crisp sound rang out. The aggressive iron arrow, the moment it made contact with the golden thunder, didn't even last a second. The runes on it shattered directly, and the arrow shaft, forged from fine iron, instantly turned into fly ash, drifting away with the wind. The laughter on the village wall came to an abrupt end. The cruelty on Bei Feng's face froze, and his eyeballs nearly popped out. Thunder! How is this possible? Not just him, all the people of Bay village were dumbfounded. A baby who looked like he was still drinking milk could summon thunder with a casual wave, and he even blasted a rune-enhanced iron arrow into ash. What kind of demonic art is this? My turn. Little Shi Hao didn't give them time to be surprised. He stomped his feet fiercely on the ground. Boom! The ground exploded, forming two deep pits. Using this reaction force, the little guy jumped over 10 meters high, like a small golden cannonball, crossing the village wall and crashing heavily into the crowd. Ouch! Oh my god! Several unlucky Bay villagers were sent flying, their bones broken and tendons snapped. Little Shi Hao landed, patted the dust off his hands, and looked up at Bei Feng not far away. Are you the bad guy who shot Uncle Linhu? Little Shi Hao clenched his fists, golden arcs of electricity crackling on them. Big brother said you belong to me. Bei Feng was, after all, a genius of Bay village. After a brief shock, he quickly regained his senses. Looking at the little one before him, who wasn't even as tall as his waist, a surge of anger at being humiliated welled up in his heart. Little brat, just because you know a bit of precious technique, you think you're invincible. You're courting death. Bei Feng threw away his longbow, drew a gleaming dagger from his waist, and charged like a ghost. His speed was extremely fast, the dagger coated in deadly poison, slashing towards Little Shihao's throat. Too slow. Little Shihao shook his head. He lifted cauldrons in Shi village every day. His blood-moving realm was already at perfection, with tens of thousands of jin of strength in a single arm. In the face of absolute strength and speed, these flashy techniques were like slow motion. Whoosh! Little Shihao threw a punch. He didn't use thunder, just pure physical body strength. The wind from his punch whistled, actually creating a sonic boom. Bei Feng's face changed drastically, only feeling a mountain-toppling, sea-draining force rushing towards him. He wanted to change his move, but it was already too late. Bang! The fist smashed into the dagger. The dagger, forged from fine iron, instantly broke into 3 pieces. The fist's momentum didn't diminish, smashing fiercely into Bei Feng's chest. Crack! The sound of bones cracking was clearly audible. Bei Feng screamed, his whole body flying backward like a kite with a broken string, crashing into a stone house and burying himself in a pile of rubble. Cough, cough, cough. Bei Feng struggled to crawl out, his mouth full of blood, the arrogance in his eyes long replaced by terror. Where is this a child? This is clearly a young vicious beast in human skin. Yous don't come over. Bei Feng was afraid. He crawled backward on his hands and feet, wanting to escape. Big Brother said one must pull up the weeds by the roots. Little Shihao remembered Yi Xuan's teaching, a coldness appearing on his little face that didn't match his age. He took a deep breath and pointed both hands toward the sky. Thunder come! A loud shout shaking the surroundings. Rumble! The originally clear sky was suddenly covered in dark clouds. A golden thunder pillar, as thick as a water bucket, struck down straight from the clouds as if it were heavenly punishment. Its might was more than 100 times stronger than his casual strike earlier. This was the complete Xuan precious technique. No! Bei Feng roared in despair, wanting to dodge, but the lightning had already locked onto his energy. Sacrificial spirit, save me. At the final moment of his life, he called out his only hope. But the lightning was faster than his voice. Boom! Golden light submerged everything. The earth trembled violently, and an open space in the village was directly blasted into scorched earth. When the light dissipated, where was there any sign of Bei Feng? Only a charred corpse remained on the spot, still smoking, thoroughly dead. One strike, instant kill. Their entire Bei village fell into a deathly silence. Everyone was scared out of their wits by this terrifying scene. That was Bei Feng, the genius in the village with the most hope of achieving a breakthrough to the cave heaven realm. He was actually blasted to death by a lightning strike from a baby. Run! These people are devils. Don't know who shouted, but the defense line of Bei village instantly collapsed. Everyone threw away their armor and weapons, wanting to flee to the back mountain. Just at this moment, roar! A roar full of tyranny and anger came from the cave in the back mountain. A terrifying aura swept across the entire scene like a tidal wave. Those Bei villagers who were fleeing, upon hearing this sound, not only were they not afraid, but they showed expressions of wild joy. Sacrificial spirit. The sacrificial spirit has come out of seclusion. These savages from Shi village are dead. A violent wind suddenly rose, sending sand and stones flying. A colossal monster rushed out from the back mountain. It was an old Bei. Its front legs were extremely short, and it was lying on the back of a giant wolf. Its fur was already grey and white, with much of it fallen out, revealing the ugly skin underneath. But its pair of eyes revealed a heart-palpitating sinister and cunning nature. What was even more terrifying was that behind it, a grey cave heaven realm vaguely appeared, inhaling and exhaling the essence of heaven and earth. A cave heaven realm vicious beast. The sacrificial spirit of Bay Village, Old Bay. Who is it who killed my people? Old Bay spoke in human language, its voice sharp and piercing. It saw the charred corpse of Bei Feng on the ground, and the fury in its eyes instantly erupted. Bei Feng was a disciple it had carefully cultivated, preparing to wait until he was trained to help it break through its shackles. Now he had actually been killed by someone. I will swallow you all alive. Old Bei opened its blood-red mouth and sprayed fiercely at little Shihao and the people of Shi village below. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Dozens of cyan wind blades sprayed out from its mouth. Each wind blade was as large as a door panel, tearing through the air, emitting a shrill screeching sound, even cutting through the rocks on the ground like tofu. This strike was enough to mince everyone in front of the village gate into pieces. Chapter 16, Chaos Double Pupils are invincible, a complete victory. Little one, hurry and dodge. Captain Shilinhu was shocked and wanted to rush over to rescue him, but the wind blades were too fast. There was simply no time. Little Shihao had just unleashed his ultimate move, and was in that moment where his old strength was spent, but his new strength had not yet arisen. Facing this blow from the cave heaven realm, his little face turned deathly pale. At that critical juncture, a calm voice rang out amidst the storm. You dare to touch my younger brother in front of me? Who gave you the audacity? Xuan moved. He stood with his hands behind his back, his clothes rustling in the gale. He did not take a step, nor did he raise a hand. He simply opened his eyes, which had been narrowed until this moment, abruptly. Boom! An ancient bell chime seemed to resonate throughout the world. In Xuan's eyes, the two overlapping pupils instantly separated and then merged again. The grey chaos kai was no longer suppressed, pouring out like a breached dam. Chaos Double Pupils activated. 2 streaks of grey light shot out from his eyes. The light was not dazzling, it was even somewhat dim. But wherever it passed, whether it was the gale or the sharp wind blades, everything froze instantly. Time and space were frozen at this moment. Those wind blades, capable of cutting through metal and stone, dissolved and disintegrated silently under the illumination of the grey light, just like ice and snow meeting the scorching sun, finally reducing back into the most primitive spiritual Kai particles. What kind of eye technique is this? The originally arrogant and domineering Old Bay now looked as if he had seen a ghost, his fur standing on end. In those eyes he saw great terror. It was destruction, it was withering, it was the final destination where all things end. Run! Old Bay was, after all, an old monster who had lived for many years, and his intuition was extremely keen. He couldn't even summon the thought of resisting, so he turned his wolf head and tried to burrow into the deep mountains. Too late. Xuan stood in place, his gaze locked onto the figure fleeing in panic. Disintegrate. He spat out 2 words softly. His words carried the power of law. The 2 streaks of grey light caught up with Old Bay. There was no earth-shattering explosion, nor was there a scene of flesh and blood flying everywhere. In the horrified gaze of everyone, that massive Old Bay, who possessed the cultivation of the cave heaven realm, suddenly froze in midair. Immediately after, its fur began to fall off, its flesh began to dissipate, and its bones began to shatter. It was just like a pencil drawing being erased by an eraser. It didn't even have time to let out a scream. From its tail to its skull, it disintegrated inch by inch. In less than 3 breaths, that arrogant sacrificial spirit disappeared into thin air just like that. Only a thick mist of blood remained, drifting slowly in the air, proving that it had once existed. One glance. Instant kill of a cave heaven realm expert. The whole world seemed to go quiet. The people of Bay Village opened their mouths wide, like ducks held by the throat, unable to make a sound. The men of Shi village were also stunned, looking at the back of the young man standing in front, who looked like a god or demon. Is this the strength of the little immortal master? This is too terrifying. Gulp! Captain Shilinhu swallowed hard, feeling his perception overturned. He only knew Xuan was strong before, but he didn't expect these eyes to be the real ultimate weapon. Xuan slowly closed his eyes, covering the chaos Kai in them. The first time he fully activated the disintegrate law of his Chaos Double Pupils, the burden on his current body was not small, and the corners of his eyes felt slightly sore. But he was very satisfied with the effect, because this was just training his eye technique. Subsequently, Xuan looked at the remnants of Bei village, who were already scared silly. Old Bei is dead. Xuan's voice was cold and ruthless. Leave none alive. This sentence was like a verdict from the Grim Reaper. Kill. Avenge Fei Jiao and the others. Wipe out these scumbags. The people of Shi village finally reacted, their long-suppressed anger erupting completely. Beat the drowning dog. Dozens of fierce Shi village men, wielding bone clubs and broadswords, rushed up. The people of Bei village had already been scared out of their wits by the scene just now and had no courage to resist, knowing only how to cower and run. This was a one-sided slaughter. Half an hour later, the battle ended. Bei village, a tumor that had done evil on the edge of the great wilderness for many years, completely became history. Little immortal master, look what we found. Captain Shilinhu ran over excitedly, holding a few spiritual plants emitting medicinal fragrance in his hands, as well as several pieces of rare, refined iron ore. This Bei village treasury is full of good things. Just this type of blood-replenishing grass alone is in the dozens. Xuan took a look and nodded. Very good, pack everything up and take it away. Don't even leave them a single stone. The sunset glow spilled onto the road of Shi village. When the huge figure of the green-scaled eagle tore through the sky and landed slowly on the open space at the entrance of the village. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng and the villagers left behind, who had been waiting anxiously, finally let go of their hanging hearts. They're back, everyone is back. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng leaned on his cane and greeted them tremblingly. When he saw that Captain Shilinhu and the others were covered in blood, but were high-spirited and not missing arms or legs, the old clan chief's eyes moistened. Clan chief, mission accomplished. Captain Shilinhu jumped off the eagle's back and threw several bulging animal skin bundles on the ground. Bei village is gone. These are their family assets, and from now on they all belong to our Shi village. Hearing this, the villagers burst into cheers. Not only because they had obtained resources, but also because the tumor that had oppressed them for many years had finally been eradicated. Night fell. In the square in the center of Shi village, an unprecedentedly grand bonfire was lit. The firelight soared into the sky, dispelling the chill of the great wilderness night. Golden, oily beast meat was roasted on racks, and spirit medicine and meat soup looted from Bei village were stewed in large tripods, the aroma drifting for 10 miles. The men ate meat and drank wine from large bowls, boasting about today's battle achievements. The women laughed on the side, and the children shuttled and played among the crowd. Xuan sat quietly on a blue stone under the willow tree, holding a bowl of wine, watching this scene full of life. There was no sense of urgency like in the Primordial Era, where one might be swallowed by a great demon at any time, nor was there the oppression of saints scheming against all living beings. Although it was barren and dangerous here, it possessed the purest warmth and peace. This feeling is really nice. Xuan smiled at the corners of his mouth and took a sip of wine. Just then, a burst of playful noise came from behind the large tripod. Caught you, caught you. Little one is drinking milk secretly again. I saw 2 children, Pai Hu and Da Zhuang, sneaking up from behind with mischievous smiles, dragging little Shihao out from behind a stone. Little Shihao clutched that familiar pottery jar tightly in his arms, with a circle of white milk stains hanging from the corners of his mouth. I didn't. Little Shihao's small face turned red, and he tried his best to hide the pottery jar behind his back, his big eyes blinking as he tried to quibble. This is milk tea that big brother made for me. It's for cultivation. Bleh, shame, you're 3 years old and still drinking milk. Pai Hu made a face, causing the surrounding adults to burst into laughter. Little Shihao was so embarrassed, he wished he could find a crack in the ground to crawl into, and finally could only look at Xuan for help. In that aggrieved little appearance, where was there any of the majesty from before when he struck Bei Feng with lightning? Xuan watched this scene and couldn't help but laugh out loud. This is the future Emperor Huang. Who could have thought that the man who dominated the ages would have such an amusing, dark history in his childhood? The night wind blew. The charred willow wood at the entrance of the village swayed gently. The hundreds of newly grown emerald green branches emitted a glistening green light in the night, like a gentle net, enveloping the entire Shi village. Willow deity did not speak, but the rhythmic radiance seemed to beat along with the laughter of the villagers. The years were quiet and good. This was probably the meaning of protection. Chapter 17, Rapid Breakthrough, Array Formation Realm King, the mountain treasure emerges. Time flew like an arrow, and life in Shi village flowed in tranquility. Since wiping out Bei village and bringing back the Xuan treasure body, the resource reserves of Shi village had reached an unprecedented peak. And under the willow tree at the village entrance, Xuan's cultivation had reached its most critical moment. Early morning, the morning glow scattered. Xuan sat cross-legged on the bluestone, his eyes tightly closed. There were no brilliant runes dancing in the sky around him, only a heavy, mountain-like aura surging slowly. This was the 10th day of his seclusion. If one didn't count the time flow on the side of the Great Desolation, he had only been cultivating in the perfect world for a full month. A month for an ordinary cultivator might not even be enough to find the threshold of the blood-moving realm. But for Xuan, who possessed the innate human race Tao body and Chaos Double Pupils, this was already enough for him to walk a path that would take others decades. Spirit Transformation Realm Perfection. Xuan whispered in his heart. The Kai and blood within his body were no longer simply surging, but filled with spirituality. Every drop of blood, every bone, every inch of meridian was glowing, as if possessing its own life. The physical body becoming spirit, reshaping the true self, this was the ultimate of the spirit transformation realm. Immediately after, his aura changed. Inscription Realm. In this realm, one no longer borrowed the primitive runes of vicious beasts, but carved one's own Tao into the body. When ordinary cultivators reached this step, they often sought the true blood of powerful ancient descendant species, carving the runes of vicious beasts like the Xuan or Qionqi onto their bones to borrow the power of the vicious beasts. But Xuan did not. His bones were crystal clear, like the finest mutton fat immortal gold. He did not need to borrow the power of vicious beasts. He was an innate human race created by the hands of Nuwa. His body was the most perfect vessel in heaven and earth, carrying the innate Tao rhyme of the Great Desolation. Carve. Xuan's divine thought was like a blade. He channeled the innate ancestral Kai within his body, combined with the primitive life runes taught by the Willow deity, and began to carve onto his own bones. There was no wildness of the Xuan, no ferocity of the Qionqi. What he carved were complex and ancient, innate Tao patterns. These patterns were natural, as if they were the projection of the great Tao on the human body. As the last stroke fell, Xuan's bones trembled in unison, emitting a sound like a great bell. Inscription Realm achieved. And it was an innate inscription that surpassed all ancient vicious beasts. But this was not the end. Xuan's aura was still climbing, like a giant dragon that had been suppressed for a long time, charging towards the final barrier. Array Formation Realm. This was the watershed of cultivation in the lower realm. Once crossed, one could be called a prince, capable of carving out territory and being crowned king in the ancient kingdoms of the outside world, ruling over a region. This realm required inscribing various killing formations within the body, turning the body into a weapon. Formation Rise. Xuan's mind moved. He chose not to carve a formation. Instead, he chose to use himself as the formation eye. The 5 internal organs corresponded to the 5 elements, the 4 limbs corresponded to the 4 poles, and the spine transformed into a heaven-reaching great dragon. He refined his own body into a seamless, integrated formation. This was not carving a killing formation, This was the embryonic form of physical body becoming a saint. Boom! A heaven-shaking roar erupted from within Yi Xuan's body. A terrifying pressure, with him as the center, instantly swept across the entire Shi village. Little Shi Hao, who was feeding the green-scaled eagle at the village entrance, was shocked and sat on the ground, the jerky in his hand dropping. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng, who was discussing matters with his clansmen, only felt a tightness in his chest, and the cane that never left his hand fell to the ground with a clatter. This pressure. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng turned his head in shock, looking towards the village entrance. There a figure slowly stood up. Yi Xuan was surrounded by faint chaos kai. Although he did not intentionally release his aura, that pressure from the level of life made an old man like old Chief Shi Yunfeng, who had seen the world, feel his legs go weak. King, Prince. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng's voice trembled, his eyes almost popping out. Array Formation Realm. This is the fluctuation of the Array Formation Realm. Heavens, a teenage Array Formation Realm king. If this were in the outside ancient kingdoms, those princes and emperors would probably be so ashamed they would want to crash into a wall and die. The villagers were also stunned. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribers, and share to Infinite Novel Audio. They didn't understand the realm divisions, but their instincts told them that the current Yi Xuan was countless times more terrifying than that old Xuani from before. Big brother is so amazing. Little Shi Hao climbed up from the ground, patted the dust off his bottom, his big eyes filled with stars. I also want to grow up quickly and become as strong as Big Brother. Yi Xuan restrained his aura, and that suffocating pressure instantly disappeared, as if it had never appeared. He clenched his fist, feeling the power within his body capable of moving mountains and filling seas. Array Formation Realm. Now, relying solely on my physical body, I should be able to easily suppress a vicious beast of the Array Formation Realm. A satisfied smile appeared on the corner of Yi Xuan's mouth. The people of Shi village came to their senses and surrounded him, their faces beaming with ecstasy. Congratulations to the little immortal master for the major achievement in his cultivation. Great, our Shi village has produced a king. We must celebrate tonight. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng was so excited his old face was red. He picked up his cane and was about to arrange the evening feast. However, at this moment of celebration, rumble, deep in the great wilderness, a heart-stopping loud noise suddenly came. The sound was too loud, 1,000 times louder than thunder, as if the sky had collapsed. Immediately after, the originally clear sky darkened instantly. A breath filled with destruction, ferocity, and tyranny, like a tsunami, came flooding from the depths of the great wilderness, instantly covering a territory of tens of thousands of miles. What is happening? The smile on old Chief Shi Yunfeng's face froze. The villagers looked at the distance in terror, only to see in the deepest part of the great wilderness, which was also the most core area, 4 terrifying figures were fighting crazily between heaven and earth. Those were 4 behemoths, each emitting the pressure of a venerable that made heaven and earth change color. The first figure was a giant bird. It was too large, with wings spread out for thousands of feet, covering the sky and sun. Its whole body was pitch black like ink, without a single stray feather, and its body was surrounded by thick black mist. It opened its huge mouth, and that mouth was like a black hole. That is the heaven-swallowing sparrow. Old Chief Shi Yunfeng's voice trembled, recognizing this peerless vicious beast with a notorious reputation in the great wilderness. Legend has it that the heaven-swallowing sparrow could swallow the population of tens of millions of an ancient kingdom in one bite, and wherever it passed, the land would be barren for 1,000 miles, with no living creatures left. The second figure looked like a giant tiger, but it had wings on its back and was covered in sharp barbs. Every step it took crushed a mountain peak. Its roar was like thunder, shaking the void realm. One of the 4 ancient vicious beasts, Kionki. The third figure was a giant ape with a golden body. It held a huge black iron rod, standing tall against the sky, its whole body covered in brilliant golden fur, as if cast from gold. It leaped between the mountains, and every strike of the rod caused the earth to crack into an abyss. Xuan. And high in the sky there was a fourth figure. That was a small fiery red bird. Although not large in size, it was surrounded by white flames. That was the southern bright leaving fire, burning everything. Ancient divine bird, vermilion bird. 4 venerables. 4 creatures standing at the peak of the 8 regions of the lower realm were gathered here in the great wilderness, fighting until heaven and earth cracked. What are they fighting over? Xuan narrowed his eyes, his Chaos Double Pupils activated, his vision piercing through layers of dust and chaotic energy flows. In the center of the battle, between the 4 venerables, there was a white, glistening bone fragment floating in the air. That bone fragment looked ordinary, yet it emitted a hazy, holy brilliance, and no matter how terrifying the attacks of the 4 venerables were, they could not harm it in the slightest. The mountain treasure. Xuan's heart stirred. Sure enough, this day had finally arrived. Chapter 18, Willow Deity's manifestation shocks the world, suppressing the 4 vicious beasts. Hand over the item. The heaven-swallowing sparrow let out a sharp screech, its voice piercing through metal and stone. This item belongs to me. Kionki roared in anger, its claw shattering a mountain peak. Rubble splashed everywhere, raining down like a meteor shower. The great wilderness suffered the consequences. Countless vicious beasts and birds living in the mountains and forests trembled under the pressure of the venerable realm, or were directly shattered into blood mist by the aftermath of the battle. Furthermore, countless human race tribes were wiped out in this catastrophe. Although Shi village was still some distance from the center of the battlefield, that terrifying fluctuation had already reached them. Houses were shaking and the ground was cracking. The villagers' faces were deathly pale, and the children were crying in terror. It's over, is this divine retribution? How can we possibly withstand vicious beasts of this level? A sense of despair was spreading. Facing a battle of the venerable realm, mortals were like ants, lacking even the qualification to flee. Center of the battlefield. The heaven-swallowing sparrow's cold, sinister eyes swept across the area below. It saw the dense masses of living beings in the great wilderness and the human race tribes that were fleeing. HMPH. A cold snort resonated throughout heaven and earth. There are too many creatures in the great wilderness, too many mouths laid to loose lips. The heaven-swallowing sparrow's voice was cold and ruthless, carrying an indifference that viewed life as nothing more than blades of grass. The secret of this item must not be leaked. To prevent the information from leaking, it opened its massive maw, capable of swallowing the heavens and earth. A black vortex formed within its mouth, and a terrifying suction force erupted. Today, I shall bathe the great wilderness in blood. Starting with the human race, leave none alive. Boom! As its words fell, a destructive suction force enveloped the area for thousands of miles below. Countless ancient trees were uprooted, massive rocks flew into the sky, and countless beasts and human race members let out shrill screams, flying uncontrollably toward that black hole-like maw. This was a massacre. An extermination massacre carried out to cover up a secret. Although Shi village was protected by the Willow deity and had not yet been sucked away, that world-destroying pressure already made it impossible for everyone to breathe. It wants to eat us. Captain Shi Lin, whose hand gripping his bone blade was trembling, his eyes filled with despair. Fight, let's fight it. Some hot-blooded men wanted to rush out, but were held back tightly by old Chief Shi Yunfeng. Don't go, that is a venerable realm entity. Going there is just throwing your life away. Cries, shouts, and desperate prayers intertwined. Amidst this apocalyptic scene, under the willow tree, Xuan's expression was terrifyingly calm. He looked up, his Chaos Double Pupils piercing through the vast distance, coldly watching the arrogant heaven-swallowing sparrow. Bathe the great wilderness in blood. 8 humans. A cold arc curled at the corners of Xuan's mouth. A mongrel bird dares to claim it will devour the human race right in front of the human emperor. Do you really think I'm made of mud? Besides, the Willow deity is still here. Xuan turned, facing the willow tree. At this moment, the willow deity's hundreds of newly grown branches were swaying slightly, clearly angered by these few ignorant juniors. Xuan cupped his hands and bowed deeply. Master! His voice was not loud, but it carried a chilling, killing intent. A few noisy pieces of game are disturbing the peace of Shi village. Disciple implores Master to take action and suppress them. At the village entrance, the willow tree that had been silent for so long suddenly erupted with an aura that made the heavens and myriad worlds tremble. It was not the revival of an ordinary tree, but an immortal king in slumber opening their eyes. Hundreds of emerald green branches that were originally drooping softly suddenly straightened at this moment. Swish! Without any warning, the willow branches instantly surged, transforming into chains of order that reached the heavens and connected the earth. Green light surged to the heavens, every leaf held up a star, and every branch seemed to be evolving a world. The originally dim sky was instantly illuminated by this brilliant green light. A phantom of a willow tree, too vast to describe, slowly manifested above Shi village. It was too large. Its canopy was like a cover, blocking out the sun, moon, and stars, shrouding the entire great wilderness. Its roots were anchored deep in the void realm, absorbing the essence of the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Before that magnificent manifestation, the 4 venerable realm entities that had been arrogant and seemed ready to destroy the world just moments ago instantly became as small as ants. The visual impact was so intense that everyone held their breath. Is this Lord's sacrificial spirit? The people of Shi village knelt on the ground, their souls trembling. High in the sky, the rampaging heaven swallowing sparrow's cold, sinister eyes revealed extreme terror for the first time. Its pride and joy, the devouring black hole, was like a ridiculous little bubble in front of this heaven-reaching willow tree. Who are you? How can such an existence exist in this lower realm? The heaven-swallowing sparrow shrieked, its voice filled with panic. It felt the aura of death. It was an absolute suppression of the level of life. It flapped its wings desperately, trying to tear through the void realm and escape. Noisy. A ripple of divine thought swept across heaven and earth. The willow deity made no unnecessary movements. Just one willow branch reached out lightly. It ignored spatial distance and ignored the protective black mist swirling around the heaven-swallowing sparrow, as if piercing through a thin layer of paper. Puff! A soft sound. That emerald green, jade-like willow branch pierced straight through the heaven-swallowing sparrow's skull, which was as hard as divine iron. Blood splattered, dyeing the sky red. The heaven-swallowing sparrow's massive body stiffened abruptly, and the fierce light in its eyes quickly dissipated. Its primordial spirit was directly shredded to nothing by the chains of order under this strike. One strike, body and soul destroyed. This infamous demonic bird, which had devoured countless living beings, didn't even have a chance to beg for mercy before it became a warm corpse. Raw. On the other side, Kyonki saw this, and was scared to the point of soul flying away and spirit scattering. Its monstrously fierce aura collapsed instantly, and its wings flapped frantically as it tried to flee this terrifying place. Since you have come, you shall stay. Another willow branch swung. It looked incredibly gentle, like a spring breeze brushing against a willow. But when it landed on Kyonki's back, it was as heavy as billions of jun. Crack! A crisp sound of breaking bones resounded through the sky. Kyonki let out a shrill scream. Its spine, which it was so proud of, was snapped on the spot by this willow branch. Its massive body lost support and fell from the high sky like a pile of mud. Collect! The willow branch curled lightly. The corpses of the heaven-swallowing sparrow and Kyonki, as huge as mountains, quickly shrank under the entanglement of the chains of order. All their essence and flesh were perfectly sealed, without losing a single bit. In the blink of an eye, the 2 corpses became the size of small hills, carried by the willow branch, and were tossed lightly onto the threshing floor of Shi village. Thud, thud. 2 dull thuds, those were the ingredients for tonight. This scene happened too quickly. From the moment Xuan spoke to the fall of the 2 venerable realm entities, no more than 3 breaths of time had passed. The world returned to clarity. Only the trembling golden Xuan and the vermilion bird, which had retracted all its flames and curled into a ball, remained high in the sky. The two of them had originally been competing for the mountain treasure, but unlike the heaven-swallowing sparrow, they had not attacked the mortals. At this moment, watching their 2 fellow Taoist peers die instantly, these 2 venerable realm entities were so scared that their fur stood on end. The black iron rod in Xuyan's hand was shaking, and its golden eyes were filled with innocence and pleas for mercy. The vermilion bird even buried its head directly into its wings, not daring to look at that terrifying willow tree at all. Too terrifying. How could this be a sacrificial spirit? This is clearly a supreme deity in the lower realm. Chapter 19, Vermilion Bird and Xuan Submit, 6 Paths of Reincarnation, Heavenly Art. The willow deity's dharma form slowly receded, transforming back into the seemingly ordinary willow tree at the entrance of the village. Considering that your cultivation has not been easy, and you have not wantonly slaughtered the human race, but instead once protected the peace of a region in the great wilderness. The willow deity's voice resonated in the minds of the 2 beasts. Death may be spared, but you cannot escape punishment. From this day forth, your cultivation will be sealed, and you shall remain here to guard the house until your tribulation period ends. As the voice faded, 2 willow branches flew out, gently tapping the foreheads of the Xuan and the vermilion bird. 2 complex runes were branded down. The 2 venerables felt their vast divine power instantly locked away, and their massive bodies began to shrink rapidly. A moment later, the towering golden giant ape transformed into a tiny golden monkey only the size of a fist. That divine bird, the vermilion bird, which could incinerate all things, turned into a palm-sized red bird. From high and mighty venerables, they instantly became harmless, cute pets. Squeak, 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 I won't dare to do it again. Chirp, 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 don't kill me. The 2 little beasts lay on the ground, kowtowing like they were pounding garlic. Xuan watched this scene, the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and he walked over slowly. He first reached out, grabbed the golden monkey by the scruff of its neck, and lifted it up. So this is a Xuan. Xuan examined the fuzzy little thing. Although it had shrunk, its golden fur remained smooth and shiny, and its large eyes darted around, revealing a sense of cleverness. From now on, you shall be called Maoqiu. Xuan stretched out his finger and flicked the little monkey on its forehead. You are pet number 1 of our village. Maoqiu aggrievedly covered its forehead, daring to be angry but not daring to speak. It was a dignified venerable, yet it had fallen to the point of being flicked on the head, and it was given such a tacky name as Maoqiu. But after glancing at the willow tree swaying in the wind at the village entrance, it immediately behaved, obediently rubbing against Xuan's finger and revealing a fawning smile. Those who know the times are wise. Next, Xuan looked at the red bird on the ground. As for you, since you're all red, let's call you Little Red. You are pet number 2. The vermilion bird's body stiffened. It felt like it wanted to die. Little Red. This is way too casual. But it could only nod with tears in its eyes, and it even had to let out a crisp cry to express its gratitude. Big brother, can this monkey be eaten? At this moment, little Shihao ran over, staring at Maoqiu, tears of disappointment flowing from the corner of his mouth. Squeak! Maoqiu was so scared that its fur stood on end, and it zoomed onto Xuan's shoulder, gripping his clothes tightly. This one cannot be eaten, this one is for guarding the door. Xuan smiled and patted little Shihao's head. We will eat those 2 guys. He pointed to the 2 venerable corpses on the ground, which, although shrunk to the size of small hills, still emitted terrifying blood energy. Tonight, we'll have vermilion bird hot pot and braised tiger ribs. Little Shihao cheered and led a group of children rushing toward the prey. After dealing with the pets and ingredients, Xuan's gaze fell on the ground not far away. There, a piece of bone as white as jade lay quietly. It was the source that triggered this world-shaking battle, the mountain treasure. the thing that the four great venerables couldn't obtain even after fighting until the sky collapsed, and the earth shattered, was now just casually lying on the ground, ignored by everyone. Xuan walked over and picked up the bone piece. It felt warm and smooth in his hand, like a piece of warm jade. The bone piece was a cube, with all 6 sides engraved with dense runes, but it was sealed by a mysterious power, making it unclear. Master! Xuan took the mountain treasure and went under the willow tree. Is this the so-called Supreme Hall legacy? A branch of the willow deity drooped down and gently wiped across the bone piece. Cracked. The seal that even venerables could not break was like window paper in front of the willow deity, shattering instantly. The moment the box opened, a treasure light shot into the sky, erupting with thousands of auspicious rays and myriad paths of colorful light. Countless Tao runes intertwined in the air, evolving into all sorts of incredible visions. There were 6 ancient worlds rotating, as if they wanted to pull all the heavens and myriad worlds into reincarnation. A 9-leaf sword grass took root in the void realm. As its leaves fluttered, it cut down the sun, moon, and stars, with sword kai traversing hundreds of millions of miles. There were also the phantoms of countless primordial vicious beasts roaring, displaying their respective innate divine abilities. Good stuff. Xuan's double pupils instantly opened, staring fixedly at those visions. He saw it. Inside the bone piece, several shocking and supreme techniques were recorded. The first one was named 6 Paths of Reincarnation, Heavenly Art. This was a great divine ability, specifically used to master multiple precious techniques. It could fuse different precious techniques together, unleashing power that exceeded limits. The second one was a sword technique. On the metal sheet was engraved a blade of grass with 9 leaves. Each leaf was like a peerless immortal sword. Grass sword art. The legacy precious technique of the 9-leaf sword grass, one of the 10 fiends of the Primordial Era. It was said that a single blade of grass could sever the sun, moon, and stars, with unparalleled offensive power. Grass sword art. Xuan's breathing became a bit hurried. Although he was the human emperor in the Primordial Era, the human race had always lacked top-tier offensive means. This grass sword art did not require any special bloodline. As long as one's comprehension ability was high enough, even an ordinary blade of grass could unleash peerless sword kai. This was simply tailor-made for the human race. Just imagine, in the future, if every member of the human race in the Primordial Era cultivated the grass sword art and formed a powerful army of sword immortals, facing the Yao race army, one swing of the sword would see 10,000 Yao lose their heads. What kind of grandeur would that be? Besides these 2 ultimate skills, the mountain treasure also recorded the original true explanation, Transcendence chapter. That was the general outline of cultivation, expounding the most essential truths of the Tao. There were also precious techniques of dozens of primordial vicious beasts, such as the True Hu, Golden Crow, and Golden-Winged Peng. A huge harvest. This was absolutely an unprecedented huge harvest. Xuan held the scorching bone piece, the joy in his heart simply indescribable in words. With these things, his foundation in perfect world was considered completely solidified. Master, this object is precious. Although Xuan was excited, he had not lost his reason. He knew that some things inside would move even the Willow deity. You should keep it. The Willow deity's voice was very calm. Although these techniques are good, I already have my own Tao. Instead, it is you who possess the strengths of many schools and happen to need that heavenly art to coordinate them. As for that sword technique, the Willow deity paused and continued. It is too murderous, but it is indeed suitable for you right now. Cultivate it well. After speaking, the Willow deity said nothing more. Xuan solemnly tucked the mountain treasure into his bosom. He turned around, looking at the tribesmen who were busy making fire to cook, and looking at the desperate-looking Mao Qiu and Little Red. Xuan felt a surge of heroic spirit in his heart. With these legacies, his foundation had strengthened significantly once more. In the great wilderness, time is the least valuable thing. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed quietly. Life in Shi village returned to peace. But beneath this peace, Xuan and little Shihao were undergoing astonishing transformations. Chapter 20, Comprehending the 6 Paths of Reincarnation, Heavenly Art and Grass Sword Art, Breakthrough to the Venerable Realm. Under the willow tree at the village entrance, Xuan sat cross-legged, his figure as motionless as an ancient sculpture. Xuan's eyes were not closed. Deep within his chaos double pupils, chaotic energy swirled rapidly, frantically deconstructing the runes within the legacy. First was the 6 Paths of Reincarnation, Heavenly Art. This was a supreme foundational doctrine for controlling all techniques. It did not provide direct offensive means, but it allowed the practitioner to wield multiple precious techniques simultaneously, ensuring they did not conflict and their power multiplied. In Xuan's field of vision, this heavenly art manifested as 6 massive black holes, slowly rotating. Each black hole represented a way of wielding power. Wielding precious techniques is like commanding an army. Xuan realized in his heart the thunder of the Xuani precious technique, the vitality of the Willow deity method, and even the power of reincarnation from the newly mastered reincarnation precious technique. All had originally been soldiers fighting on their own. But under the coordination of the 6 Paths of Reincarnation Heavenly Art, they began to form a formation. 3 distinct types of power fused perfectly within his body, forming a more terrifying mixed divine power. Next was the Grass Sword Art. This 10 Fiend's precious technique carried far too much killing intent. Xuan only slightly stirred a trace of sword intent, and the bluestone beneath him silently split with a neat cut. A single blade of grass can sever the sun, moon, and stars. Xuan looked at the swaying 9-leaf sword grass within his sea of consciousness. That was not grass, that was the ultimate sharpness of the Tao of the sword. He did not rush to cultivate the sword moves, but instead used his Chaos Double Pupils to analyze the concept of severing everything. The comprehension ability of the innate human race was displayed to the fullest at this moment. The 10 Fiend's precious technique, which would take ordinary people decades to master, was being rapidly unraveled before his eyes. Xuan exhaled a breath of turbid air. Aside from comprehending the techniques, he had another important task over the past 3 months: eating. A rich, meaty aroma drifted over Shi village every day. It was the flesh and blood of the heaven-swallowing sparrow and Kionki. These 2 venerable realm ancient descendant species were like mobile treasure troves, their flesh and blood filled with essence. Every day, Xuan consumed over 100 jin of venerable flesh. The violent essence entering his body was instantly absorbed and refined by his insatiable innate Tao body. His accumulation had long since reached a critical point. The array formation realm involved engraving formations within the body. Xuan used himself as the formation, and now that this formation had absorbed enough energy, it was about to undergo a qualitative change. Almost there. It was noon on this day. Xuan put down the mountain treasure in his hand. He picked up a piece of golden, oily roasted Kionki leg meat from the side and swallowed it in a few bites. Roaring essence exploded in his stomach. Break, Xuan whispered in his heart. There was no earth-shattering lightning tribulation, nor any flashy phenomena. Everything happened naturally. The countless microformations within his body lit up in unison at this moment, then merged into one. A grand, noble, and transcendent aura rose from within his body. Venerable Realm. This was the limit of power that the 8 regions of the lower realm could contain, a true existence standing at the pinnacle of the pyramid. Xuan slowly stood up. The air around him distorted slightly, unable to withstand this pressure. He clenched his fist, feeling that power that controlled heaven and earth. If he were to encounter that heaven-swallowing sparrow or Kionki now, he wouldn't need the Willow deity to take action. He could pin it to the ground and rub it into the dirt with one hand. So this is the Venerable Realm. Xuan's expression was calm, without much joy. For someone possessing the Dual World Gate and Chaos Double Pupils, the the venerable realm was merely an insignificant starting point. Just then, a commotion came from not far away. "Look, little one is about to break through too." Xuan turned his head to look. He saw that the area in front of the large black cauldron in the center of the village was crowded with people. Beneath the cauldron, a blazing fire raged. Inside, it wasn't water that was boiling, but deep purple blood. That was the true blood of the Kionki that Xuan had specifically left behind, with several hundred-year-old spirit medicines scavenged from Bay Village added to it. The medicinal potency was terrifyingly strong. If an ordinary child were to enter, they would be burned to ashes in an instant. But at this moment, the little guy sitting in the cauldron wore an expression of enjoyment. Little one's eyes were tightly shut, and every pore on his body was emitting rays of light. 3 months had passed and he had grown taller. Although he still looked like a child, his frame was as sturdy as a calf. He was making his final sprint. The peak of the blood-moving realm. "Ha!" Little one suddenly opened his eyes and let out a shout. The true blood inside the cauldron exploded instantly, turning into a blood-colored dragon that drilled into his body. Rumble, the sound of a rushing great river, echoed within his body. A swing of a single arm, 108,000 jin. No, not only that. That power of blood and Kai continued to climb, directly breaking through that so-called limit barrier. 120,000 jin, 150,000 jin. Finally, it settled on a number that would make even ancient vicious beasts despair. However, it wasn't over yet. With blood and Kai at perfection, the next step was to open the heavenly passages. "Open for me." Little one leaped from the cauldron and hovered in midair. Astonishing energy erupted from his small body. Hum, the void above his head trembled. A heavenly passage like a volcanic crater appeared out of thin air, frantically plundering the essence of heaven and earth. Immediately after the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. Without any pause, without any difficult accumulation. It was like a chain of volcanic eruptions. A full 5 heavenly passages were opened simultaneously in this instant. The 5 heavenly passages were arrayed behind little one, connected in a string like 5 blazing suns, illuminating the entire Shi village. Opening 5 heavenly passages in one go. This was unheard of in the history of cultivation in the lower realm. Squeak, my god. Chirp, is this even human? Not far away, Mao Qiu and Little Red, who were gnawing on bones, were completely stunned. The bone in Mao Qiu's hand fell to the ground, and he clutched his head with his 2 little golden paws, his eyes wide open. He was a Zhu Yan, an ancient descendant species, naturally gifted. But when he opened his own heavenly passages back then, he had to grind them out one by one. Even among the first generations and prodigies of the upper realm, he had never heard of anyone who could open 5 at once. This was simply contrary to common sense. Little Red buried her head in her wings, deeply traumatized. As a dignified ancient divine bird, the vermilion bird, she had cultivated for over 100 years to become a venerable. What about these two? One jumped from the array formation realm to the venerable realm in 3 months. One 3-year-old toddler opened 5 heavenly passages in one breath. What kind of monster nest was this Shi village? Little one landed, retracted the heavenly passages behind him, his little face full of excitement. "Big brother, I did it." He rushed to Xuan as if asking for praise. Xuan smiled and helped him wipe the blood from his face. "Not bad, barely acceptable." If outsiders heard this, they would likely die of anger. Opening 5 heavenly passages in one go is called barely acceptable. But in Xuan's view, Emperor Huang should have this kind of presence. "All right, go and stabilize your realm." Xuan dismissed little one and set his gaze on the 2 pets, who were still doubting their existence. Seeing Xuan look over, Mao Qiu and Little Red immediately stood up straight, looking obedient and well-behaved. Over these 3 months, they had been completely beaten into submission. Not just because of the Willow deity's deterrence, but also because of the terrifying aura that Xuan occasionally revealed. Chapter 21, Advancing to the Peak of the Venerable Realm, Shihao opens 8 Cave Heaven Realm. You two little ones. Xuan walked over slowly and said with a smile. You have been quite diligent in guarding the house for these past 3 months. Xuan pointed to the Willow deity behind him. Go ahead, Master has something to say to you. Hearing this, the 2 little beasts shuddered. The Willow deity wanted to instruct them. This was a massive opportunity. They did not hesitate at all, scrambling over to the base of the willow tree and kneeling respectfully on the ground. The willow branches swayed gently. Mysterious thoughts were transmitted into their minds. That was the true profound truth of the divine fire realm, an orthodox method that not even the upper realm might be able to access. The Willow deity did not teach them any earth-shattering precious techniques. She merely offered guidance on how to refine their bloodline and ignite their Tao fire. But for them, having been stuck in the venerable realm for many years, this was equivalent to parting the clouds to see the sun. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Maoqiu was so excited that his golden fur glowed. He felt the opportunity for a breakthrough. Little Red's entire body ignited with pure Li fire, and her originally mottled bloodline was purified in that moment. As long as they cultivated according to this method, within a few months, they would be able to truly ignite their divine fire, transcend the venerable realm, and become true gods. The 2 little beasts kowtowed frantically towards the willow tree, their eyes filled with tears of gratitude. They had originally thought being captured as pets was a huge humiliation. Now it seemed. This wasn't being a pet, this was clearly hugging a golden thigh. Forget about guarding the house. Even if they were asked to shovel manure for Shi village right now, they would be more than willing. Xuan watched from the side and nodded slightly. A stick and a carrot. Now these 2 venerable realm combatants were completely won over. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months passed. Under the willow tree in Shi village, Xuan sat quietly on the bluestone that had been polished smooth by the passage of time. At this moment there were no earth-shattering phenomena around him, nor any dazzling divine light. He appeared completely plain and unadorned, like a piece of warm, unpolished jade, with all his sharpness hidden within his body. But beneath that calm exterior lay an unfathomable ocean. Venerable Realm Peak. Xuan slowly opened his eyes. Deep within his Chaos Double Pupils, the flow of Chaos Kai was circulating several times faster than before. In these 3 months, he had studied the original true explanation and the 6 paths of reincarnation, heavenly art day and night, integrating everything he had learned. The arrays within his body had long since evolved to the extreme, with innate Tao patterns inscribed in every bone and every inch of flesh. Now he stood at the apex of cultivation in the 8 regions of the lower realm. One more step forward and he would ignite his divine fire, transcend the mundane and become a god. Xuan could clearly sense that layer of paper separating him from the next stage. If he wished, he could trigger the laws of heaven and earth at any moment, or find a kindling to ignite his own essence, energy and spirit, stepping into that realm that countless cultivators dreamed of. Divine fire, Xuan raised his hand, and a phantom flame danced in his palm. That was his deduction of his own Tao fruit. But in the next second, he clenched his 5 fingers tightly, extinguishing the phantom flame. Wrong. Borrowing external objects to ignite oneself is ultimately an inferior path. Xuan shook his head. In this world, igniting the divine fire usually requires the help of an external kindling. The stronger the kindling, the greater the potential after becoming a god. But he possessed the dual world gate, the Chaos Double Pupils, and an innate physique from the Primordial Era. If he followed the conventional path, even if he ignited it with immortal fire, it would not be worthy of his human emperor destiny. My path should not be limited by heaven and earth. The human body is a universe, why seek from outside? The Chaos Kai in Xuan's eyes became even denser. He saw a certain possibility for the future. Body as seed. Without relying on external objects, digging into his own treasure trove, and allowing the most pure Tao fire to be born from within his body. This was the most perfect path of evolution, and the path most suitable for an innate human race physique. Suppress it for now. Xuan took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the urge to break through. He compressed the boiling divine power within his body over and over again. The divine power, originally as violent as a river and sea, was forcibly pressed into viscous mercury-like slurry, settling deep within his limbs and bones. His foundation became even more unfathomable. Just as Xuan had stabilized his realm, boom, a dull explosion suddenly came from not far away. It was as if a volcano deep within the earth had been detonated. A vigorous, domineering, and vibrant golden blood aura shot into the sky, directly scattering the clouds above. Xuan turned to look. He saw little Shihao floating in midair, with heart-palpitating energy fluctuations erupting from his small body. Behind him, 1, 2, 3, a full 8 Dongshan, like volcanic craters, were lined up in sequence, connected head to tail, transforming into a dazzling divine ring hanging behind his head. 8 Dongshan. Each Dongshan was crazily absorbing the essence of heaven and earth, and there were even magma-like runes flowing within them. That was the Tao fruit he had gained from fighting and baptisms in the great wilderness. Although he was still young and his face was still tender, at this moment, little Shihao already possessed an aura of swallowing mountains and rivers, of being the sole sovereign. That was a young supreme. 8 Dongshan now. Xuan watched this scene, a gratified smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. 3 months ago, this little guy had only just opened 5 Dongshan. Now, having opened 3 more in succession, if this speed were known, it would be enough to make those youths outside, who prided themselves on being geniuses, die of shame. Little Shihao landed slowly, and the divine ring behind him faded. He opened his eyes, which were frighteningly bright, like 2 golden lamps. Big brother, I've become stronger again. Little Shihao waved his fist excitedly, the air cracking with the force of the blow. Now, even if 10 more vicious beasts of the cave heaven realm came, I could beat them all down with one hand. Not bad, you haven't been slacking off. Xuan nodded in approval. However, don't be proud, 8 Dongshan is just the beginning. Your goal is 10 Dongshan or even. The unique Dongshan. Little Shihao nodded as if he understood, keeping this goal in his heart. Just as the 2 brothers were exchanging cultivation insights, on a nearby tree branch, 2 pairs of eyes were staring blankly at them, filled with the despair of doubting their beastly lives. It was Zhu Yan and Little Red. These 2 once mighty venerable realm beings, although they had recovered a lot of their origin Kai and were about to ignite their divine fire, were completely numb after looking at these 2 monsters before them. Squeak, 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 life is impossible now. Mao Qiu held his head, looking completely dejected. He had cultivated for hundreds of years, experienced countless life and death tribulations, only to reach the venerable realm. But what about these 2 humans? One was suppressing his realm and refusing to break through, and the other had jumped 3 Dongshan in 3 months. Was this as simple as eating and drinking? Where could they, these ancient descendant species, put their faces? On the other side, Little Red, that is, the vermilion bird, was even more on pins and needles. She was a beautiful and proud divine bird. For the past 3 months, she had watched Xuan eat the flesh and blood of the Qionqi and the heaven-swallowing sparrow every day. Although she had also eaten a little bit herself, the sense of fear in her heart was increasing day by day. Chapter 22, Betrothed to Huolinga, setting off to train in the outside world. The vermilion bird watched as little Shihao held the bone club of a Qionqi, constantly venturing into the great wilderness to battle vicious beasts. And after killing those vicious beasts, he would bring them all back to the village to eat. It was simply too brutal. These 2 devil heads, one big and one small, were practically the bane of vicious beasts. It always felt that if there were ever no meat to eat, the look in Xuan's eyes would become very dangerous. That look seemed to be saying, braised or steamed. No way, I can't stay here anymore. The vermilion bird shivered, and its beautiful red feathers stood on end. If I stay any longer, I'll end up as roast meat sooner or later. It glanced at Xuan, who was communicating with the Willow deity, and its small eyes rolled around. Since it couldn't win a fight, how about seduction? No, that's not right, it's using wit. Taking advantage of Xuan's good mood, the vermilion bird flapped its wings, flew over cautiously, and landed in front of Xuan. Big boss. The vermilion bird retracted all of its divine fire, trying its best to look harmless, and even rubbed its wings together, striking a flattering pose. Ahem. Xuan lowered his head, looking at this palm-sized red bird. What, are you hungry? There is still some kionki meat left in the pot. No, 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 not hungry. The vermilion bird shook its head repeatedly in terror. It never wanted to hear the word pot again. It took a deep breath, gathered its courage, and said, Big boss, I've been in the village for 3 months now, and I haven't been lazy about guarding the house. Can you let me go back to visit my family? Visit your family? Xuan couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Yes, 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 I'm homesick. The vermilion bird's eyes were filled with tears, and its tone was sorrowful. I am the sacrificial spirit of the Fire Nation. If I don't go back, the Fire Nation will fall into chaos. Seeing that Xuan remained unmoved, the vermilion bird gritted its teeth and decided to play its trump card. It leaned in closer, lowered its voice, and said mysteriously, Big boss, as long as you let me go back, I will give you a big gift. Huh, what big gift? Xuan became a bit interested. A wife, I will give you a wife. The vermilion bird puffed out its chest and said confidently, I'm old buddies with the Fire Emperor. As long as I say the word, I'll make him marry his most beloved little princess to you. That little princess is named Huolinga, and I watched her grow up. The vermilion bird gestured with its wings as it spoke. That girl is so lively and pretty. Her skin is fair, her eyes are big, and besides. It seemed to have thought of an adjective and added earnestly. And she's chubby, she looks very blessed. You can tell at a glance that she's good at bearing children. How about it, big boss? Is this a good deal? That's a princess of the Fire Nation. Her dowry must be piled up like a mountain. Putting. Little Shihao, who was drinking water nearby, spat it out. Xuan's mouth also twitched as he looked at this red bird that had started pimping to save its life, feeling a mix of amusement and exasperation. Chubby. This adjective. If that proud little Princess Huolinga heard this, she would probably pluck all the feathers off this sacrificial spirit. Besides, who wants your chubby girl? Is this your beauty trap? Xuan reached out and knocked the vermilion bird on the forehead without ceremony. Thump. Ouch. The vermilion bird covered its head and looked at Xuan, aggrieved. Big boss, you don't like chubby ones. Then there are thin ones too. The Fire Emperor has many daughters. Shut up. Xuan interrupted its sales pitch. He stood up and brushed off his clothes. I'm not interested in your princesses. However, Xuan's gaze swept over the vermilion bird, making it feel a chill run down its spine. If you want to leave, that's fine. But you have to leave behind a ransom. Hand over your vermilion bird precious technique, and then you can leave. When the vermilion bird heard this, it wasn't angry at all. Instead, it felt as if it had been granted amnesty and was so excited it almost jumped up. Just the precious technique, not its life. This was simply too conscientious. If the precious technique was gone, it could practice again, but if its life was gone, it was really gone. Moreover, facing a prodigy of Xuan's level, it didn't count on being able to hide the precious technique anyway. Take it, this princess will give it to you right now. The vermilion bird didn't hesitate at all and spat out a crimson bone symbol. That was a piece of original true bone, imprinted with the vermilion bird precious technique. Big boss, please accept it. The vermilion bird diligently handed over the bone. Xuan took the bone symbol. Chaos Double Pupils activated. Two grey divine lights swept across the surface of the bone. In an instant, those complex and profound vermilion bird runes were dismantled into the most fundamental fire Dao laws in his eyes. Controlling fire, shape-shifting, burning the heavens. In just a moment, a pure crimson flame ignited in Xuan's palm. In that flame, a divine bird could be vaguely seen spreading its wings and soaring. Vermilion bird precious technique, mastered instantly. All right. Xuan put away the flame and casually tossed the bone symbol back to the vermilion bird. You can go now. Right, really. The vermilion bird caught the bone, still unable to believe that happiness had come so suddenly. What, do you want to stay for dinner? Xuan looked at it with a half smile. No, not eating. I'm on a diet recently. The vermilion bird was so scared it shivered all over. Whoosh! A red light flashed on its body, and the seal was lifted. Although its size didn't immediately return to its original form, the aura belonging to Venerable finally resumed its circulation. The green mountains will not change, the green waters will flow forever. Big boss, thank you for not killing me. The vermilion bird flapped its wings, turned into a red streak of light, and shot into the sky, its speed reaching the extreme, fearing that Xuan would go back on his word. After flying far away, the vermilion bird's slightly cocky voice came from the sky. Big boss, I was serious about the marriage proposal. When I return to the Fire Nation, I will tell the Fire Emperor. I'll save the chubby girl for you, wait for me. The vermilion bird's voice echoed in the valley. Hearing this, Xuan shook his head helplessly. This little red bird really had a loose tongue. Big brother, what is a chubby girl? Little Shihao came over and asked curiously. It's, the kind that can eat a lot. Xuan casually made up an excuse. Wow, that must be very powerful. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribers, and share to Infinite Novel Audio. Hearing this, little Shihao looked amazed. In his simple worldview, being able to eat was a blessing, and being able to eat meant being strong. All right, stop thinking about the chubby girl. Xuan withdrew his gaze and looked toward the distance of the great wilderness. That was the direction of the outside world. Little one. Here. With your current state, staying in this she village, it's already hard to improve. A fledgling eagle must eventually spread its wings, and a fierce tiger must eventually return to the mountains. Xuan patted little Shihao on the shoulder, his tone becoming serious. Do you want to go see the outside world? After hearing this, little Shihao froze for a moment. He looked at the village where he had lived for 3 years, and then looked at the boundless great wilderness. A flash of reluctance passed through his eyes, but there was more longing for the unknown. I do. I want to go see if the outside world is really as big as the clan chief grandpa says. I want to go find my parents even more. When he finished speaking, the little guy's voice lowered. Hearing this, Xuan couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This piece of karma in the end had to be faced. Chapter 23, Willow Deity's Favor, Saving Shi Qingfeng. Good. Xuan turned around and looked at the willow tree that stood in silent guardianship. Master, this disciple intends to take little Hao out for some training. The willow branches swayed gently, conveying a peaceful thought. Go, a true dragon cannot be raised in a greenhouse. The vast great wilderness, though filled with danger, is also the best whetstone for hunting one's edge. If you encounter an enemy you cannot defeat, taking a step back is no shame. But if someone bullies the weak with their might. There was a hint of dominance in Willow Deity's voice. Take this willow branch with you. A tender green branch detached itself, transformed into an emerald-like ring, and landed in Xuan's hand. It was an incarnation of an immortal king. With this item in hand, no one in the 8 regions of the lower realm could hurt them in the slightest. Thank you, Master. Xuan accepted it solemnly and bowed. This was a part of Willow Deity, Master was still too doting on him. Xuan thought happily to himself. Let's go, little one. We need to go pack our things first. Our journey has only just begun. The next morning, amidst the reluctant gazes of old Chief Shi Yunfeng and all the villagers, a huge vicious bird soared into the sky from the open space at the village entrance. It was an azure sky rock. After 3 months of Xuan's feeding and guidance, this green-scaled eagle mount had completely completed its bloodline reversion transforming into an azure sky rock. Furthermore, it had achieved a breakthrough to the array formation realm, its feathers shining like cast blue gold, radiating a formidable aura. Xuan and little Shihao sat on the bird's broad back. Little Shihao carried a huge bundle filled with beast milk, dried meat, and snacks. He lay on the edge, waving frantically at the villagers below. "Grandpa Clan Chief, everyone take care. I will come back. I'll bring you lots and lots of gifts when I return." Xuan sat cross-legged in the front, watching Shi village grow smaller below, and cast his gaze toward the distant east. There was a holy land of cultivation, called Heaven Mending Pavilion. That was the first stop where Emperor Huang made a name for himself. "Let's go." Xuan gently patted the neck of the azure sky rock. "Target Heaven Mending Pavilion." Screech! The azure sky rock let out a long cry, its wings shattering the drifting clouds, and it vanished into the horizon like a bolt of blue lightning. A bear child has appeared. The great wilderness is about to get lively. High above the 9 heavens, the gale wind howled. The cloud layer was violently torn apart, and a behemoth cast a massive shadow beneath the firmament. It was an azure sky rock, its wingspan stretching several hundred meters, its feathers looking like they were cast from blue gold, each quill flashing with a cold, metallic luster. It flapped its wings gently, stirring up a violent wind, soaring 90,000 li into the sky. As a vicious beast of the array formation realm, the terrifying pressure it radiated caused countless vicious beasts in the great wilderness below to tremble, hiding deep in their caves, not daring to show their heads. On the back of this aerial overlord, however, was a completely different scene. Wow, so high! Little Shihao lay on the neck of the azure sky rock, with half his body hanging off the edge. The gale blew his short, black hair into a mess behind him, but he didn't care at all. His big eyes were full of excitement as he pointed at the mountains and rivers below, which looked like ants, and shouted, "Big brother, look, doesn't that mountain look like a big steamed bun? And that river, doesn't it look like a long worm?" Xuan sat cross-legged in the back, holding an ancient book, the original true explanation obtained from the mountain treasure. Hearing little Shihao's shouts, he smiled helplessly and cast a barrier of Kai to help the little guy block the biting gale. "Sit tight, don't fall off." "I won't." Little Shihao chuckled, turned his head, and looked at the little golden monkey squatting on his shoulder. "Maoqiu, look, isn't the outside world huge?" At this moment, Maoqiu was squatting there with its arms crossed, looking cold and aloof. Although it had shrunk to the size of a fist, this did not stop it from putting on the airs of a venerable. Hearing little Shihao's words, Maoqiu curled its lips, a hint of disdain flashing in its golden eyes. "Squeak, what a country bumpkin, hasn't seen the world." It was a Zhu Yan, an ancient vicious beast. What kind of scenes hadn't it seen? This was merely flying at a low altitude. Back when it fought against gods above the 9 heavens, that was a real scene. Well, actually, it was just bragging. How could it have been a match for gods before? Although little Shihao couldn't understand monkey language, he could understand expressions. "Oh, you little Maoqiu, how dare you look down on me?" Little Shihao raised his eyebrows and reached out to pluck Maoqiu off his shoulder. "Squeak, squeak, squeak, presumptuous, this venerable is a venerable." Maoqiu struggled desperately, wanting to use its dignity as a venerable to intimidate this bear child. Unfortunately, its cultivation was currently under a seal by Willow deity. Besides having thick skin, it had less strength than an ordinary monkey. "That'll teach you to roll your eyes, that'll teach you to act so deep." Little Shihao pressed Maoqiu onto the bird's back, stretched out his chubby little hand, and gave its furry butt a good spanking. Smack, smack, smack. The crisp sound of slaps echoed in the wind. "Squeak, help, the bear child is abusing a divine beast." Maoqiu screamed repeatedly, tears almost flowing out. It felt so aggrieved. A dignified venerable of the great wilderness, reduced to getting its butt spanked by a 3-year-old human cub. If this got out, how cowl? Could it ever show its face in the vicious beast circle again? Xuan watched this scene without stopping it, finding it quite stress-relieving instead. "All right, stop playing." Xuan put away the ancient book and cast his gaze forward. We are almost there. The land ahead gradually changed from the wild primeval jungle to plains with signs of human habitation. Ancient cities were situated between the mountains and rivers. Though dilapidated, they exuded a sense of historical vicissitudes. That was the second ancestral land of the Shi country. It was also the place where Shihao's lineage had once lived. The azure sky rock slowly lowered its altitude and finally landed outside a seemingly desolate manor. We're here. Xuan jumped off the bird's back and straightened his clothes. Little Shihao also jumped down, carrying the life-weary Mao Qiu in his hand. He looked around curiously. The place was full of broken walls and overgrown weeds, looking as if it hadn't been taken care of for a long time. Big brother, why are we here? Little Shihao scratched his head, feeling puzzled. There's not even a ghost of a shadow here. There definitely isn't anything good to eat. Xuan looked at the mottled vermilion gate, his expression becoming somewhat complex. Little one. He squatted down and looked at Shihao seriously. There is an old man here and a child. That child should have been like you, enjoying the love of his parents and growing up carefree. But for your sake, he has suffered a lot here. Little Shihao was stunned. For me. Although he was young, his mind was clear. Hearing this, little Shihao's heart tightened for no reason. Let's go in and see. Xuan took little Shihao's hand and pushed open the heavy gate. Craig. The gate opened and an aura of decay rushed toward them. The yard was even more desolate. But in the corner of the yard, the sounds of insults and whipping could be heard. Chapter 24, Slaying the Wicked Servants, arriving at Heaven Mending Pavilion. Old thing, why are you so slow at doing some work? And you lame little bastard, stop playing dead. If the firewood isn't finished today, no one is allowed to eat. Several servants dressed in brocade robes with arrogant expressions were surrounding a ragged old man and a frail child. The old man had white hair and a beard, a face full of wrinkles, and his back was hunched beyond recognition. He was kneeling on the ground, protecting the child in his arms with all his might, letting the rain-like lashes fall upon his own thin, bony back. As for the child, he looked even smaller and thinner than Shihao, sallow and gaunt, with legs that seemed to be disabled, cowering in the old man's arms and trembling, his large eyes filled with terror. Stop, the old man begged in a hoarse voice. King Feng is still young and he is sick. I beg you, stop hitting him. Sick, it would be better if he died from his sickness. A leading servant sneered and lashed down hard with the whip in his hand. Anyway, the orders from above are just to keep him alive. This little bastard is just a waste of food while he's alive. Snap, the whip landed, tearing the skin and flesh. The old man trembled all over from the pain, but he gritted his teeth and didn't make a sound, only holding the child in his arms tighter. Stop, a childish roar, filled with monstrous rage, suddenly exploded. Little Shihao saw this scene, and his eyes turned red instantly. Although he didn't know the old man and the young one, he could feel the old man's protection over the child, just like the clan chief grandfather was towards him. You bunch of bad guys, little Shihao, like an enraged little lion, charged out fiercely. Where did this wild child come from? The few servants were stunned for a moment, and before they could react, they saw a fist rapidly enlarging before their eyes. Bang! The servant holding the whip was sent flying over 10 meters by a single punch, hitting the wall with his chest bone caved in, fainting without even letting out a scream. The remaining few were scared silly. Where did this child with monstrous strength come from? Do you still want to fight? Little Shihao stood in front of the old man and the child, his small body erupting with an astonishing aura, with cave heavens faintly appearing behind him. A cultivator. The remaining servants' expressions changed drastically, and they turned to run. Did I say you could leave? A cold voice, like the whisper of the Grim Reaper, sounded in their ears. Xuan had appeared at the courtyard entrance at some unknown time. He was dressed in white as snow, spotless, and completely out of place with this dirty courtyard. But the chill in his eyes made the surrounding air freeze. Seeing Xuan, those servants felt as if they were looking at an Asura who had walked out of hell. My lord, have mercy, we are from the Yu clan. One of them still wanted to bring up their backing. The Yu clan, the corners of Xuan's mouth curled into a mocking arc. It is exactly the Yu clan that I am killing. Before the words faded, Xuan simply raised his hand and lightly clenched it towards the void realm. Crack, several crisp sounds rang out simultaneously. The heads of the few servants who were running away were twisted a full circle, as if by an invisible giant hand, and they collapsed limply onto the ground. They died instantly. For such lackeys who bully others by relying on their power, Xuan never spared his killing intent. The courtyard returned to silence. The old man tremblingly raised his head, his cloudy old eyes filled with disbelief. He looked at little Shihao standing in front of him, and then looked at the white-clad youth at the door who looked like a deity. "Why, you are," the old man's voice was trembling. He could feel that the same bloodline aura as his was flowing through both this big one and the small one. Especially the small one, the eyebrows, the expression, they looked exactly like that child from back then. "Are you, Heyoa?" Tears welled up in the old man's eyes. Little Shihao turned around and looked at this old man who was in the twilight of his years. Although his memory was blurry, that feeling of kinship, thicker than water, made his nose ache. "Great-grandfather," he instinctively called out this title. Yes, it's Heyoa, it really is Heyoa." The old man was so excited he wanted to stand up, but his body was too weak and he had suffered serious injuries. As soon as he moved, he coughed violently, and black blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. "Old man, don't move," Xuan walked over. Seeing the old man's body, which was almost at the end of its rope, a flash of pity crossed his eyes. This old man had suffered endless torture here in order to protect Shihao's substitute, Shi Qingfeng. This loyalty was worthy of respect. Xuan flipped his palm. A water droplet emitting three-colored divine light hovered in his palm. It was the three-light divine water. "Open your mouth," Xuan said softly. The old man opened his mouth subconsciously. The divine water entered his throat. Boom, a vitality so immense it was indescribable instantly exploded within the old man's body. His withered kai and blood, like a dry riverbed receiving a flood, instantly became full. The wounds on his body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and even those old, hidden ailments were swept away. The originally grey hair actually began to turn black. The wrinkles on his face were also slowly smoothing out. This is, the old man was too shocked to speak. He could feel that not only were his injuries healed, but even his cultivation showed signs of a breakthrough. This was simply the legendary divine medicine. "I gave you some tonics," Xuan smiled without explaining too much. He turned his head to look at the child who had been cowering in the old man's arms, Shi Qingfeng, the child who had suffered for Shihao. At this moment, he was looking timidly at Xuan and little Shihao, his eyes filled with both envy and inferiority. "Qingfeng," Xuan reached out and patted his head. "The bitter days are over. From now on, follow us. No one will dare to bully you again." Shi Qingfeng stared blankly at Xuan, feeling the warmth coming from the top of his head, and tears fell drop by drop. After cleaning up the aftermath, Xuan did not stay long in the ancestral land. After all, this was a place of trouble, and the Yu clan had many eyes and ears. Although he wasn't afraid, there was no need to waste time here. "Let's go to Heaven Mending Pavilion." Xuan summoned the Azure Sky Rock. When the old man saw the fierce bird of the Array Formation Realm, he almost knelt down again. An Array Formation Realm mount. The way the old man looked at Xuan had completely changed. He had originally thought that Xuan was just a protector for Shihao, or a genius from some major sect. But now it seemed that this youth's strength was probably even more terrifying than the current Stone Emperor. Such a figure was actually Heyoa's big brother. Truly, heaven blesses the Shi clan. A few days later, a towering, spiritually beautiful mountain appeared in everyone's view. The mountain soared into the clouds, and amidst the swirling mist, pavilions and towers were faintly visible, with immortal cranes dancing. At the foot of the mountain, there was a sea of people. Genius youths from various clans, accompanied by their parents, were swarming toward the mountain gate like carp crossing a river. Today was the day Heaven Mending Pavilion recruited disciples. As a famous ancient sect in the lower realm, Heaven Mending Pavilion's entrance examination was extremely strict. Countless people were breaking their heads just to secure a spot as an outer sect disciple. So many people, little Shihao lay on the bird's back, looking at the dark mass of people below, rubbing his hands in excitement. Now I can have a big go at it. Xuan stood on the head of the azure sky rock, his clothes fluttering, his expression calm. Chapter 25 Bushan Pavilion Master personally welcomes Xuan's transaction. Xuan looked at the heaven-mending pavilion that had stood for endless years, a glimmer of light flashing deep within his heavy pupils. This place would be the first stop of Shihao's rise. It would also be the center where the winds and clouds gathered. Go down, Xuan said indifferently. Kree, the azure sky rock, let out a piercing cry that could split gold and crack stone. The terrifying pressure of an array formation realm prince was released without reservation. The previously noisy area in front of the mountain gate instantly fell silent. Everyone looked up in terror. They saw a cyan divine bird blocking out the sky, pressing down like a dark cloud. The gale roared, blowing those so-called geniuses who were still in the blood-moving realm and cave heaven realm until they were swaying unsteadily, their faces deathly pale. Is that an ancient descendant species? Heavens, it's a fierce bird of the array formation realm. Which big shot has descended? Amidst the awestruck gazes of the crowd, the azure sky rock slowly landed on a huge rock in front of the mountain gate. Xuan stood with his hands behind his back, looking down at the common beings below. Little Shihao jumped down. Although he was small, the aura of a newborn calf unafraid of a tiger was not weak in the slightest. Little one, Xuan pointed at the towering mountain gate, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Go. This place will be the starting point for you to make a name for yourself in the desolate region. Remember, don't save any trouble for me. Whoever dares to be unconvinced, just beat them until they are. Little Shihao grinned, revealing a mouthful of small white teeth. Don't worry, big brother. I will let them know what a supreme youth who loves to drink beast milk is. Xuan loves to drink beast milk. Hearing these words, the corners of Xuan's mouth couldn't help but twitch a few times. A huge shadow enveloped the mountain gate of the heaven-mending pavilion. The azure sky rock at the peak of the array formation realm retracted its wings and hovered in midair. Even though it did not deliberately release its fierce might, the oppressive feeling from its ancient descendant species bloodline still made the young geniuses who had come to apprentice turn pale and their legs tremble. This was a prince-level fierce bird. In the 8 regions of the lower realm, such an existence was often the guardian of an ancient kingdom, yet at this moment it was docilely acting as a mount. Which senior has arrived at the heaven-mending pavilion? An aged but resonant voice came from deep within the heaven-mending pavilion. Immediately after, several rays of rainbow light shot into the sky. The leader was an old man dressed in a grey robe, with white hair and beard and deep eyes. His body was surrounded by a faint radiance of runes, and every step he took caused a slight tremor in the void realm. It was the Bushan Pavilion Master. Behind him, 4 elders with white hair and beards followed closely, their expressions extremely grave. They had originally thought it was from some primeval sacred mountain, as this kind of pomp really didn't look like the methods of the human race. However, when they saw the white-clad figure on the bird's back clearly, the gravity in their eyes instantly turned into astonishment. The human race. It was actually a human race youth. Xuan stood with his hands behind his back, on top of the azure sky rock's head. He did not deliberately restrain his aura, and the pressure of the peak of the venerable realm flowed naturally like a great river. Facing that pressure, the Bushan Pavilion Master, who only had the cultivation of the peak of the array formation realm and a half-step venerable realm, felt his breath stagnate, as if a great mountain was pressing down on his heart. An expert. An absolute expert. This youth's strength was even 10 times more terrifying than that azure sky rock. The Bushan Pavilion Master took a deep breath, suppressing the shock in his heart, and bowed with cupped hands, his attitude extremely polite. This old one is the Bushan Pavilion Master. May I ask which fellow Taoist has arrived? In this world where strength is respected, the capable come first. Although Xuan looked young, this level of cultivation was enough to sit on equal footing with the leaders of various sects. Xuan nodded slightly and returned the salute, his movements neither humble nor arrogant. I am Xuan, bringing my younger brother Shihao to train in your pavilion for a period of time. The voice was calm, but it clearly spread throughout the mountain gate. The Bushan Pavilion Master was stunned. Bringing his younger brother to train. He subconsciously looked behind Xuan. There stood a little one who was still drinking beast milk, staring around curiously with big eyes. Just this. A venerable realm great expert, personally delivering a milk-drinking baby to apprentice. Fellow Taoist is too polite. The Bushan Pavilion Master was after all the master of a sect. He reacted very quickly, and a smile immediately appeared on his face. Since he is fellow Taoist Yi's younger brother, he must naturally have outstanding talent. Our heaven-mending pavilion welcomes geniuses from all over the world. We couldn't ask for more, we couldn't ask for more. Being able to make a venerable realm expert owe a favor, this deal was definitely profitable. Many thanks, Pavilion Master. Xuan nodded, then changed the subject, his gaze cast toward the cloud-shrouded area deep within the heaven-mending pavilion. Besides my younger brother's enrollment, I have one more presumptuous request. The Bushan Pavilion Master's heart skipped a beat. Please speak, fellow Taoist. I wish to enter your pavilion's ancient sacred academy to take a look. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole place fell silent. The expressions of the four elders standing behind the pavilion master changed instantly. Absolutely not, an elder couldn't help but speak out. The ancient sacred academy is a forbidden land of our heaven-mending pavilion. Only the most outstanding disciples of each generation have the opportunity to enter. Outsiders must never set foot inside. Although the other elders didn't speak, their expressions were just as resolute. These were the rules left by the ancestors, and even more so, the foundation of the sect. How could they let an outsider pry at will? The Bushan Pavilion Master also revealed a look of difficulty. Fellow Taoist Yi, this. Xuan's expression did not change. It seemed he had long anticipated this reaction. His pair of heavy pupils opened and closed slightly, chaos chi circulating, and his gaze seemed to penetrate the years, seeing the old vine in the heaven-mending pavilion that was about to wither and die. Everyone, rules are rigid, but people are flexible. Xuan looked at the Bushan Pavilion Master, his voice calm but pointing straight to the heart. I observe your pavilion's luck. Although it is like a blazing fire cooking oil, like blooming flowers, beneath this prosperity, there is a hidden great calamity about to arrive. The sacrificial spirit is about to die, and packs of wolves are circling. Once this great calamity erupts, whether the heaven-mending pavilion can survive is likely an unknown. The Bushan Pavilion Master's body shook, and the pupils in his eyes contracted sharply. The fact that the sacrificial spirit was about to pass away was the highest secret of the heaven-mending pavilion, known only to him and a few core elders. How did this youth see it? What does fellow Taoist mean by this? The Bushan Pavilion Master's voice was a bit tight. If you let me enter the sacred academy, Xuan said with his hands behind his back, confidently. If the heaven-mending pavilion encounters trouble in the future, I will definitely step in to help. I will ensure your sect's lineage does not perish. One sentence, heavy as 1,000 jun. The four elders looked at each other. They wanted to refute, but dared not. A promise from a venerable realm expert is worth a fortune. If the sacrificial spirit really fell, the heaven-mending pavilion would face a catastrophic disaster. At that time, an outside helper at the venerable realm level might be the only lifeline. The Bushan Pavilion Master was silent for a long time. He was weighing his options. On one side were the rigid rules, on the other was the survival of the sect. Finally, he raised his head, a glimmer of resolution flashing in his eyes. Good. Since fellow Taoist Yi has spoken, this old one will take the liberty to break the rule this once. You may enter the sacred academy, fellow Taoist. A smile curled on the corners of Xuan's mouth. The Pavilion Master is indeed a sensible person. The transaction was concluded. Outside the mountain gate, at the assessment martial arts arena. It was already packed with people. Young geniuses from major ancient kingdoms and prince estates gathered together, each one outstanding and spirited. In comparison, that little one, carrying a bundle bigger than himself and holding a milk canister in his arms, appeared particularly eye-catching. That's it for today's chapter. If you enjoyed it, like, comment, and subscribe to Infinite Novel Audio. For more stories, check out my other channel AI Otaku Studio, and I'll see you in the next chapter.